Ecclesiastes 12. Remember now thy created youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. While the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain, in the day when the keepers of the house themselves cease because they are few, and these that look out the windows be darkened, and the door shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice, at the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Also when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be a burden, and desire shall fail. Welcome to Flat Out Elected, ladies and gentlemen. This is MG42 Pillbox. Thank you for showing up with my special guest, Teal Summers, and of course the captain of this ship, Knowledge Scavenger, Paula. What's going on, ladies?
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for the delay. I had multiple audio issues, and somehow we got it worked out. I still can't share any screens. I don't know. We need a GoFundMe. I get a new computer, and everybody needs a new computer, but I can't hardly run this stuff. Every time there's an update, something goes wrong. Other than that, I'm good. How about you guys?
Peachy, beautiful day out here, man. The sun is shining.
Awesome.
Yep, I'm doing great.
Good.
Go
ahead.
Are we on chapter 8?
Yes.
Or is it? Yeah, okay.
Yes, we are.
I thought so.
We did finish up. I know you had to leave a little early. We did finish up we went a little bit into 8 just to finish the 7th seal. But
okay.
Yeah, so it's like verse 3, or not, I'm sorry, not verse 3. We went into the angel getting stuff from the altar, and we're about to verse 6, I think it is.
Okay.
All right, and like I said, I can't share any screens for whatever reason. So you have to use your imagination or get out a copy of the Bible. I'm going to be reading from mine at bible.feather.net. And I do have some links in the description, so you can try to follow along with a little bit of that. There's one link to the main text, another link to the commentary, and another link to something called Prophecy Integrated, which kind of helps give an overview of where things are and how the fact that what Jesus said in the Gospels about the end times, if you look at the details, it does match up with Revelation. The seals are kind of like the beginning of birth pangs that Jesus talked about. If you look, like I said, if you match things up. And then the trumpets are more like the next part of what he would say, although he didn't really go into the trumpets much in the Gospels, his discourse there. And then most of what he talks about is the Great Tribulation, which matches up with the bowl judgments. So that's kind of a tie in there, but like I said, I can't share screens, so I really can't go into that much because it's really hard to just describe. So did you guys want to say anything before we get starting to read?
I'm all ears.
All righty.
Yeah, I ain't got really anything to say or anything.
Okay, I'll see if if you guys once in a while you can look at the chat or something. I'm going to have a hard time doing that tonight. So
maybe does Teal have the ability to put the chat on her screen? That would be easy if she could.
Yeah, if you can share, that would be awesome.
I might be able to. Let me see if I can figure this out.
Okay, you would just be sharing the chat, so I could go ahead and start if you want.
Okay, wait. I would have to share my screen, right? And then you'd have to just broadcast me.
Yeah. What you could do, what I recommend is just first, before you share, pop out the chat.
That's what I'm trying to figure out right now.
Okay, it should be the little dots in the corner on the upper right of the live chat.
All right, hold on one second. Oh, what did I do? Crap.
Sorry about that.
All right,
Any-
let's see.
Okay, go ahead.
Now
Sorry.
just share screen, right?
Yeah, just share screen, and then I will. You should be able to present yourself because you have controls. It should say present
Okay.
to all.
All right, can you guys see it? My screen?
I don't see it. Do you see it?
Not yet. I'd have to
Yeah, you
refresh
should.
anyway. Yeah, there
Oh,
it is. Yep, it's on.
There you go. There you go. I just don't see it
It's a
on.
half and half.
All right.
Present
Well,
to everyone. Do I hit present to everyone? All right.
yes.
All right.
Yeah, but you're showing. Oh, stop. Get
What?
rid of it. Oh, okay. Sorry. You had for a second there, you had the join link. So if,
Oh,
yeah, you don't want to share that one. Only share. You don't want to share whole screen. You just want to pick out that pop out window.
the only thing that I'm worried about is I'm not going to be able to go back and forth and mute and stuff.
All right. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it because we don't want to take the risk and have everybody crash stuff and all that. So it's no big deal if we can't share the chat.
Okay, how do I get off of this thing?
Stop. Should be a big green.
All right, here we go.
It's
I
off.
got it.
There we
Sorry.
are. All right. Now I might be able, I can't share too much on the, let me try the RAN screen. I might be able to now because I have it on a different computer. I'm sorry, everybody. We're just taking a
No,
while to
it's
work
okay.
stuff
It's okay. Listen, that's okay. They got to be patient anyway. Listen, there's no reason not to be patient. There's no way we're gonna be on this earth for more than 10 years. But if I leave this hangout, just realize that I'm gonna leave to check the chat, and that's my intention to come right back. That's all I'm gonna do. If I continue to do that, don't think I'm dilly dallying.
All right, I think I got it now. For all that, I can't share it as me, but I can share it as RAN. So.
No, looks good. Victoria, what up, playa? There she is. Yeah, it's up. Good to go.
Yeah, it looks good.
Wayne Wreck.
Okay.
Suzette Anna. James Higgs Boson. Okay, go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
No biggie. All right, if we're ready, I will go ahead and start reading. I'm sorry this took so long, but man. Anyway, Revelation chapter 8, we're going to start with verse 6. As I said, I'll be reading out of the Gift New Testament, so if it sounds unfamiliar, there's probably a good reason for that. All right, we're going to start with the trumpet judgments. Last time we left off with the seals, and now we're about to do the second set of 7, and just FYI, my opinion only, I believe that the wrath of God starts with the first seal and the church is gone before that seal is opened. It's possible that the seals are not technically the beginning of the tribulation. That begins when a 7-year treaty is signed, and there's no place in Revelation that says when that's signed. We only know it by its midpoint, and it's possible that the seals are between the rapture and the start of the tribulation, and that is what Jesus called the beginning of birth pangs. Just my opinion. But anyway, let's go ahead and start reading of the 7 trumpets. Okay, the first, this is actually, let's see, yes, verse 6. Then the 7 messengers with the 7 trumpets prepared to blow them. The first trumpet sounded, and there came hail and fire mingled with blood. It was thrown to the earth, and a third of the earth, a third of the trees, and all the green grass was burned up. The second trumpet sounded, and a huge blazing mountain was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea became blood. A third of the sea creatures with souls died, and a third of the ships disintegrated. The third trumpet sounded, and a huge star burning like a torch fell out of the sky, landing on a third of the streams and springs. The star is called bitterness. A third of the waters became bitter, and many people died as a result of the bitter waters. The fourth trumpet sounded, and a third of the sun, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars were struck with darkness, such that the light of both day and night was reduced by a third. Then I saw an eagle flying through the sky, and I heard it say in a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe upon the earth dwellers because of the trumpet blasts about to be sounded by the remaining 3 messengers." Okay, that's chapter 8. I assume people can hear me. Nobody's complaining, and I don't have any sound indicator on my screen, so I don't know what's going on. But any question before I roll back and do some comments?
No, please continue.
All righty. Let's see, we can roll back to the right spot here. Okay, hail, fire mixed with blood, thrown to the earth. Everything's a third. Unlike the seal judgments, which was a fourth, and we had 4 horses, and a fourth of things were, killed or ruined, or the economy crash and all that. And this one, it's a third, a third, a third, a third, a third, all through it. And go ahead.
So this is going to be a third of the fourth that was already like after the fourth that we the 1/4 of everything.
Well, I guess the third of what's left. So,
wow.
Now, yeah, but before it was mostly, there was no specific things about the trees and all that. It was a fourth of the Earth's population was killed. Okay, we haven't got to that yet, but this is just to remark that everything that happens here is a third of it. So that it's different from the seals, because the seals had a fourth and this has a third. So just a thing to pay attention to when reading, because some people will say that these are concurrent, that the seals, the first seal is the first trumpet is the first bull, but they don't match up completely, because even though there's 7 of each, they have different quantities, different judgments, all sorts of things. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've heard some people try to say they were the same, but they had different. They try to say that it's kind of like the Gospels, where it's just a different perspective. But you're right. If it's got different numbers, that right there says it's not the same.
Yeah, so I just kind of keep that in mind. It's just a matter, I think a lot of disagreements and confusion can be cleared up if we just pay attention to details like that. So anyway, the first trumpet was, and it doesn't say what it looked like, or it just, what this really meant. It just says, when the trumpet sounded, hail, fire with blood, and thrown to the earth. That's all we know. But when this happened, we can see a very concrete and real result, which was that a third of the earth tree and the trees and all the green grass was burned. So it's some kind of fire that takes up a third of the earth, and it takes out all the grass, which I don't know if that includes grains, cereal grains or anything, but it just says grass, but only a third of the trees, and the earth itself. So for whatever that's worth, that's just what happens here. And I think a lot of this has to do with mercy and judgment, because he doesn't do everything all at once. So then the second trumpet is where we meet this huge blazing mountain, which who knows what that means. Something big and on fire is about all the accurate we can be. And it goes into the sea and does its thirds on that. And it says it becomes blood. Not that it looked like blood or resembled blood, but that it became blood. So whatever. And it caused that third of the sea, wherever that was, all the creatures with souls died. That's the word in the Greek, is souls, psyche, from where we get our word psycho or psychosis, or anything that's all based on the word soul, which is interesting. They took it from Greek. Greek didn't take it from them, so they made psychology is actually a study of the soul, and so that's interesting. But it just says that these are sea creatures with souls, which is interesting. I'm just reading the Greek here. And it's interesting also, it says a third of the ships disintegrated. That's the word in the Greek, also has the meaning of something just coming apart. And most translations will say destroyed, but that's like, war or whatever was hit by this rock. It doesn't really give me that in the Greek. It's more like something happened to those ships that made them just disintegrate or disappear or something.
Well,
Go ahead.
About the souls in the sea, isn't there other passages in Scripture that talks about some kind of sea dwellers or something?
Well, back in Genesis, it does. It says that, I think mostly about the flood, it says anything that with the breath of life in it died, in the sea. Or, wait a minute, that can't be the flood. No, it is in Genesis, but it's not the flood. But it talks about things with the breath of life in them. So, whatever that means, but
yeah,
the Greek, both Greek and Hebrew, what their words for spirit and wind and breath are all the same word. So having something that breathes air, it seems to be
like a porpoise, mammal, whale, dolphin thing, maybe.
Yeah, I would think so, because they breathe air. They have to come up and get, they have lungs.
Walrus, seals. Yeah, I mean, there's thousands of creatures in the sea that breathe air.
Right. So it's interesting, though, that the Greek is specifying that the things that die in the water are things that need air. So maybe they can't get up to the surface or something.
Yeah, that's very specific right there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And who knows what it means that the ships disintegrate. Whatever this is that happens to a third of the ocean is doing a number on things that hasn't been seen before, Then the burning torch on the third trumpet attacks the other one attacked the oceans. This one attacks the streams, so the fresh water. And this star, it calls it a star like a burning torch, and the star is called bitterness, which is wormwood, which is named, wormwood comes from a bitter herb. And so people get all kinds of ideas about what wormwood is, but the Bible here defines it as a star that burns like a torch. And whatever it does, this bitterness, I get the idea of it being poison. So it seems to be poisoning the freshwater sources, a third of them, and because it kills people when they drink it. So at any rate, this comes from the sky, and it's called a star. So I don't know. I'm just reading it. Of course, the fourth trumpet, then it takes out a third of the sun. Whether that means just its light is reduced by a third, like a dimmer switch, or whether it's like misshapen, like a chunk of it's missing, I don't know. It doesn't say. Same with the moon. And it says a third of the stars were struck with darkness, so that the light of both day and night was reduced by a third. So it is kind of a dimmer switch idea, collectively, whether it's day or night, there's a third less light than there used to be. So then at this point, who knows if this, this is an eagle flying, it says, that gives 3 woes on earth dwellers. And it seemed to be the best rendering from everything I checked when I did this, of the Greek words being people who are of the earth, the earthy people. And it doesn't mean they're not human or anything. There's different words for Nephilim and demons and all, other kinds of life, but it says that these are, it doesn't give any indication that these are not human beings. Did you have a question?
It's like sounds almost like it's non-believers.
Right.
Humans, but non-believers.
That's what I think too, because there are people who are not, like the Bible says, there's people who are on the road to destruction. Anyway, one way or another, it just, from the whole of Scripture, I would agree with you. I think these are ordinary humans, but they're just unbelievers. So, but this angel does say, if you think it's bad now, just wait. That's pretty much what they're saying. The next 3 trumpet blasts are going to be nasty. And we haven't even got to the worst of the worst yet. We're not even to the halfway point of the tribulation. So I might move on, because if we get...
That's crazy. I'm just saying that's crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If we get to chapter 12, that's going to be really... that's where we see the woman clothed with the stars and all that. So we'll see how far we get. So let me read chapter 9. The 5th trumpet sounded, and I saw a star that had fallen out of the sky, and he was given the keys to the shaft of the abyss. Smoke went up from it like the smoke from a huge furnace, darkening the sun and the air. Out of the smoke to the earth came locusts, and they were given permission like that of the earth's scorpions. Locusts were told not to harm the pastures of the earth, nor anything green, nor any of the trees, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not allowed to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. The torture was like the agony of a scorpion sting. And in those days, people will seek death, but not find it. They will want to die, but death will elude them. The locusts resembled horses prepared for battle. On their heads, they had what looked like golden victor's crowns, and they had faces like humans. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They wore body armor that seemed to be made of iron. and the sound of their wings was like many horses and chariots running into battle. The locusts had tails with stingers like scorpions, and the tails were allowed to harm people for 5 months. They had as king over them the messenger of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek, Apollyon. The first woe is gone, but look, there are still 2 to come after these things. The 6th trumpet sounded, and I heard a voice coming from the 4 projections on the golden altar before God. It told the 6th trumpeter, "Release the 4 messengers confined to the great river Euphrates." So the 4 messengers were released, having been prepared for this hour, day, month, and year to kill 1/3 of mankind. The number of the cavalry troops was 200 million. I heard that number. This is how I perceived the horses and riders in my vision. They had body armor that was fiery red, deep blue, and bright yellow. The horses' heads were like lions' heads, and out of their mouths go fire and smoke and sulfur. From these 3 disasters, the fire, smoke, and sulfur coming out of their mouths, 1/3 of mankind was killed. The horses' license to kill is in their mouths and tails, because their tails are like serpents who inflict injury with their heads. The rest of mankind who were not killed in these 3 disasters refused to change their minds from what they had done. They did not stop worshiping demons and idols of gold, silver, copper, stone, and wood, which cannot see or hear or walk around. Neither did they change their minds from their murders, their sorceries, their promiscuity, or their thefts. That's a bunch of stuff. But that's chapter 9.
After all of that, and they still won't repent.
Exactly. That's what really is mind-blowing. So, okay, 5th trumpet. The star that had fallen, I'm being careful with the Greek here, had fallen. So it was not just now falling, it had fallen. And he, it says, was given the keys to the shaft of the abyss. So this is a fallen angel, probably Satan. I can only speculate, but probably. But he had to be given the keys to the abyss, or the shaft of the abyss, it says. Whatever that means, a separate thing as a shaft, I don't know. Or a door, a gateway, or something. Anyway, the pathway or shaft to the abyss cannot be opened until Satan or this fallen angel of some sort is given the key. Whether they're trying to do that with CERN or whatever thing they're working on, trying to open a portal, they won't succeed until they're given the key. And it says when it's open, that all this smoke comes out and these creatures come out. And I won't go over the description again, but this is where we get this torment that people, some people will look at these creatures and say, well, these sound like attack helicopters. And who can say where they're, we know that John is trying to describe something he's never ever seen before, in his day. How would he describe an attack helicopter? So it could be that. It could be specially made creatures because they come out of the abyss. And it's hard to think that man-made helicopters would have been stored there. So even though the description may fit, the location they come from doesn't seem to, unless there are human things, humans working with these underground alien kind of idea, you know what I'm saying? But they couldn't come out before. So, you can go back and forth on those details, but it seems to me that I'm leaning toward these being special creatures and not really just attack helicopters. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. It doesn't make sense that, if it's a human-made construct, that it wouldn't be available to them until the keys were given.
Right. And I do think that's what they're trying to do with things like CERN. There may be other things, I'm sure there are, that we don't know about, but I think they've been trying to open it.
Well, and I think once some of this stuff happens, there's a possibility. I think that they're going to think that they opened something and they really didn't, and it's just going to deceive them even more. But that's just my personal belief.
Yeah, there's all sorts of ways you can stretch this because it's meant to be cryptic and understood by the people who go through it mostly. Most prophecies don't really click until we look back at them.
Right. I just think it would make sense if this pit being opened and then Satan being the deceiver, letting them think that they were the powerful ones that opened it, and really they didn't.
Right.
Just makes sense to me. That's all. But it may not happen that way. I don't know.
Right. I'm going to take a quick thing with the chat here. There's a person, Daniel 12, that's made comments on other videos of these things, trying to totally allegorize Revelation. And as I think it was Vic or somebody said, the most straightforward way to read the Bible is as literally as the context allows. And this is a vision, and John is simply writing down what he sees. And so if anybody says, well, it must mean such and such, they're just giving their opinion, just like I'm giving my opinion. But there's nothing in Scripture to justify allegorizing everything to the point where it doesn't even resemble what's being described here. John is watching this and just writing it down. And so, yeah, keep moderators. I don't know for sure why Daniel 12 has a wrench, but if he keeps doing that, let me know. Somebody on panel here will try to give me a message, and we might have to do something about that. But because I don't want that taking up the chat. Of course, I'm not the only one who gets to say so, but if you guys think that's appropriate, then let me know, because I have the control thingy. So I say, back to the text. Whatever these things are, they're allowed to torture people for 5 months, and people will want to die. It's so bad, but they won't be able to. And whatever these locusts are, the king over them is definitely Satan by description, because Abaddon and Apollyon. Apollyon means destroyer. I think both words mean destroyer, actually. And so this is definitely a demonic horde of some sort. Okay, and then that's only the first woe of the three. So this is really bad stuff. And then of the voice from the altar, who knows what that is? It's pointless to speculate, but it talks about 4 angels confined to the great river Euphrates. These are not the same as the 4 that held back the 4 winds in the seal judgments. These are a different 4, and they were, for whatever reason, confined to the river Euphrates, but they were finally allowed to leave there, I guess, and kill 1/3 of mankind. But they use an army that has 200 million cavalry troops. Some people used to say back a couple decades ago that this was an announcement made in the East that China had 200 million soldiers or something like that. And people today are even going, well, no, it would have to be a combined army, because not even China could do that right now. They may have 200 million people, but they didn't have, that many mounted troops, certainly. But at any rate, this is something that John understood. He knew what a cavalry was. People are mounted on horses, and that there was going to be 200 million of them that go forth only when these 4 angels at the Euphrates are allowed to lead them into battle. And then he describes them, and they're not entirely human-like either. Some say this is an army of demons, something like out of Lord of the Rings, some kind of odd creatures. So who knows? But they wear armor, and but they have really strange appearance. Even the horses' heads were like lions' heads. So who knows? Are they riding some kind of machine? Who knows? But again, it's pointless to speculate, but it is good to read it, because, like I said, if people are in this and they see this thing, then it'll make sense. Everybody will know what is going on here, I think. Let's see, 1/3 of mankind killed. And like you said, Peel, when I first finished reading it, it's like people see this and they know it's the judgment of God, like they said, even at the 6th seal, but they still don't give it up. And the word for sorcery is pharmakia. And this is where we get our word pharmacy. And in those days, that culture, there was precious little difference between drug taking and witchcraft, basically. Sorcery, because that's why you took the drugs. You didn't just take drugs to get high or feel good or get better. You took them to contact the spiritual realm. And so, people argue over which it is. They're not giving up their drugs, or they're not giving up their sorceries. They're probably, we can assume it means both, because that's what it meant back then. So, right. I don't know. Have you heard any other theories about that?
No, but I would think the same thing. And I think I tend to think that they use medication to brainwash people too. And that's what I would consider a sorcery mixed with medication.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's all tied together one way or
But-
another. So,
I mean, like you said as well, they use it to open the gateway to contact the spirit realm as well, that too. But I know that at least in the MK Ultra, all that study, they also used it on their brainwashing victims. So,
yep. I think I need to take care of a little something in chat here. 1 second. There we go. All right. Now moderation can proceed as needed. All right. Are we ready to move on to chapter 10 then?
yep.
All right. We roll down here. There we go. And I saw another strong messenger descending out of the sky. He had been clothed with the cloud, and there was a rainbow over his head. And his face was like the sun, and his feet were like pillars of fire. In his right hand he held a little open scroll. He placed his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land. He called out in a loud voice like the roar of a lion, and the 7 thunders responded. When they did, I intended to write it down, but I heard a voice from the sky saying, "Seal up with what the 7 thunders said and do not write it down." Then the messenger I had seen standing on the sea and the land lifted his right hand to the sky. He swore an oath to the eternal living one who formed the sky, the earth, the sea, and all they contain, that there will be no more delay. In the day that the 7th messenger sounds the trumpet, the secret of God will be completed, which is the gospel he announced to his slaves, the prophets. Then the voice I had heard from the sky spoke to me again and said, "Go and take the open scroll from the hand of the messenger standing on the sea and the land." So I went to the messenger and asked for the little scroll, and he replied, "Take it and eat it. It will upset your belly, but taste as sweet as honey in your mouth." Then I took the little scroll out of his hand and ate it, and it did, in fact, taste as sweet as honey in my mouth, but upset my belly. Then he says to me, "You must prophesy again to people, groups, nations, languages, and many kings." So this is kind of getting into a little bit of the middle section of Revelation, which does some, what I would describe as flashbacks, or looking back at the beginning of Revelation, sometimes to imagery in the Old Testament. This middle section is kind of a pause and some things going on that aren't necessarily going on the earth right now. So this strong angel or messenger is not God, not Jesus, because he swears an oath by God. And what it means, so first of all, the word sky and heaven are the same word in Greek. Uranos, from which we get the planet name Uranus, which, is a false god name too. They took that name, but it just means the sky or heaven. And which way you go when you're translating is really hard to figure out sometimes. It could be sky, it could be heaven, and then you got to go which heaven, So that's not something we can be really precise about the meaning between the two. And it's really not important for the most part. We know that there's a special heaven type place where God is and where all this stuff is, where John was taken. But when he hears a voice, he's looking at things on the earth. This angel comes down to the earth, 1 foot on the land, 1 on the sea, and John hears a voice from the sky from there. So it's kind of iffy, kind of vague about exactly where this voice is coming from, but it's not a big deal. And I only said that to say that sky and heaven are the same word in Greek. Nobody knows what the 7 thunders are and why John was not allowed to write what they said, but all we can do is note that and move on, because there's pointless to speculate about it.
Right, but it makes you. Why is it there though?
Yeah, I know. Why'd you have to tell us that?
Yeah, because all it does is make you curious, and pretty much we're gonna have to wait until we're with the Lord to even know what it is.
Right. Yeah, it must be written for a reason. That's all I can tell anybody. And it'll make sense probably to people at the time. I don't know. So after the 7 thunders, usually in all of Scripture, and especially it seems in Revelation, according to most people's opinion, is the land has to do with Israel and the sea has to do with everybody else, all the other nations. It's just symbolic. That's the way it's usually used. So for what that's worth, this angel is standing on both. So I guess maybe it means it's a message for everybody. But again, I am just speculating. But he's saying that there will be completeness when the 7th trumpet sounds. And as far as taking that scroll and eating it, again, everybody can only speculate, but a lot of people seem to think it means, because what the angel says about prophesying again to peoples, nations, languages, and kings is that the message itself is a good message, but it comes with a lot of opposition and suffering because when you spread it, people don't like it. And that's as good a guess as any, I think. Have you heard anything different?
Oh, yeah. No, but I'm glad to hear that because I was kind of wondering what the heck that was talking about. So I think that's a very good speculation of what it is. It seems logical to imply that.
Yeah, otherwise it's like, okay, it's written down for a reason once again. And John is still technically in the 1st century, and he would have to go on after this vision. But why it's said here, I don't know. There's a lot of why is it said here that we're going to run into. So I guess I'll move on to chapter 11. I do want to try to get to chapter 12 and maybe up to like 14 if we can. I know we started late, but if you guys are good with that, I am.
I'm good to go. Yeah.
Awesome. I guess Pillbox is busy in the chat, so we'll just leave him to that. All right, chapter 11. Then I was given a stick like a measuring rod and was told, arise and measure the temple of God and the altar and those worshiping at it. But leave out the outer court and don't measure it because it was given to the non-Judeans who will trample the holy city for 42 months. And I will give my 2 witnesses the charge of prophesying for 1,260 days clothed in sackcloth. These witnesses are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands set before the master of the earth. And if anyone decides to harm them, fire goes out of their mouths and consumes their enemies. This is how whoever decides to harm them must die. These 2 have permission to lock up the sky so it doesn't rain for as long as they prophesy, to turn the waters into blood, and to strike the earth with all kinds of disasters as often as they choose. And when they complete their testimony, the wild animal or beast ascending out of the abyss will fight and conquer them and kill them. Their corpses will lie in the main square of that city, which is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt. That is, where their master was crucified. People from every group and tribe and language among the nations gawk at the corpses for 3.5 days, refusing them burial. The earth dwellers gloat over them and even sang gifts to each other because these 2 prophets had tormented them. But after 3.5 days, the spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell upon those who watched. Then they heard a loud voice from the sky say to the 2, come up here. And they ascended into the sky in a cloud while their enemies watched. In that very hour, there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city collapsed. 7,000 individuals were killed, and the survivors were gripped with fear and gave honor to the God of heaven. So there's chapter 11. Lots in there. Whoops, I hadn't even finished it. I had a couple more paragraphs. Wait. I thought I had rolled to the end, but I'm having screen issues here, so hopefully it's like it hesitated before it rolled. I thought I was done. Sorry about that. All right, verse 14. The second woe has passed, but look, the third woe is coming rapidly. Then the 7th trumpet sounded, and there were loud voices in the sky saying, the kingdom of the world now belongs to our master and his anointed, who will reign forever. Then the 24 elders sitting on thrones before God fell down on their faces and worshiped God. We thank you, O Master God Almighty, who is and who was, because you have taken your great power and assumed your reign. The nations were angry and your rage came, and now is the time for the dead to be judged, to repay your slaves the prophets, and the small and the great who fear your name, and to ruin those who ruin the earth. Then the temple of God in heaven was opened so that the ark of the covenant could be seen inside, and there came lightning, rumblings, thunder, an earthquake, and large hail. Now we're done. Sorry about that. Okay. So first, John is told to measure the temple. Well, is there a temple? Well, there has to be because it's about to be desecrated. But on the other hand, we also know that back in Ezekiel, he was told to measure a temple that at that time did not exist. So is he measuring the heavenly temple? No, it doesn't seem so because the outer court is given to the Gentiles. So that kind of rules that out. So this is an earthly temple, but it could exist. I mean, because this is an argument, the preterist argument, that John couldn't have, or the revelation couldn't have been given before the destruction of Jerusalem because he's measuring a temple. But that argument doesn't hold water because, as we said, Ezekiel measured a temple that was non-existent because it was during the Babylonian captivity, I believe. And so that there goes the preterist argument, because the temple didn't have to be in existence to be measured because it's a vision. But on the other hand, we know that there will be a temple because it's going to be desecrated, and this would not happen to an imaginary or figurative temple, at least as far as Scripture is concerned. I'm not aware of any examples of that. So anyway, for whatever reason, whatever temple, he's going to measure it, but not the outer court. And here's the first time we see 42 months. 42, some people say, I haven't gone over this to check, but some people say that when it says 42 months, which is equivalent to 3.5 years and is equivalent to 1,260 days. These are all prophetic years of 360 days. They're all the same period of time. So why the different designations? And some people say that the 42 months always has to do with sinners. You know, the Antichrist reign, when the Gentiles, the unbelievers, so forth. So we can keep an eye on that and try to pay attention to that. But I have not done that study myself, but that's what I've heard. Okay. So anyway, this holy city will be trampled for 42 months. What's the holy city? That's Jerusalem. We know that from Daniel, especially. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people, your holy city, you know, the anointed place. I forget what the exact wording is in Daniel, but it's the temple and the people of Jerusalem and the people of Israel, those three things. And so this is going to be trampled, and so it is, once again, the earthly city, and the trampling itself is detailed more, I think it's either in Ezekiel or Joel, one of those places talks about the city being ransacked. So this is when that's going to happen, and we're just about to the midpoint because of the two witnesses. I'll get back to that in a second. Well, I guess I'm done with that part, because the city is trampled for 42 months, and then this is the first time we see the two witnesses in chapter 11, verse 3. And that's when it describes the witnesses. It says 1,260 days. Well, they're being killed at this point, so if they have been busy for 1,260 days, then they must have started at the beginning of the tribulation, even though we're just told about them now. So this is a look back. This is what I was talking about. The middle of Revelation looks back too. It tells you things that have been going on, but you're just now hearing about it for whatever reason. Go ahead.
It doesn't seem to be chronological either, like some people think, because here in chapter 11 that we just read, it's talking about Christ's kingdom being established, but we know that, you know, there's still things to come in Revelation that we're going to read. Right.
But a lot of times also it's the beginning of that establishment too. So we can't say that right now Jesus is coming, you know?
Okay. Do you think that's what's being implied in that?
I think so, all things considered, because this, like you said, we're not being told that it's happening at this point. I mean, this is only halfway through, and yet they're saying everything's completed. But we also have to remember that the seventh seal contains the seventh trumpets, and the seventh trumpet contains the seven bowls. So in a way, the seven's kind of like a link of chain of links that, the seventh links to the first. And
so do you think they're, sorry, do you think they're just kind of celebrating that it's about to come?
That's what I think. Okay. There's a lot of room for leeway on that, but this is one of the reasons that people think these things are all concurrent, that all the sevens match up, but they don't match up when you look at them, you know? But as far as the end, well, it's like Jesus said to the women of Samaria. He said, the time has come when people will no longer worship on this mountain or in Jerusalem, but in spirit and truth. And yet it took till 70 AD for the temple to go away. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So things take time. People will say, I mean, even Jesus said, the time is here, and yet it took a while to unfold, you know? So that I do have that to go on, at least. in saying, well, it seems like this, when I look at all that's going on in Revelation, it seems like this part with the two witnesses, especially just by thinking about the fact that they have been busy for 3.5 years and they're just now getting killed, that we have to look back and say, okay, they must have started at the beginning of the tribulation. It does get murky and speculative, but at least, like I say, I can find something to go on in the scriptures for that, for what that's worth.
And it's like you said as well, when it comes to prophecy that hasn't yet passed, that's pretty much what you are dealing with, is speculation to a certain degree until it does come to pass, and then it's more obvious.
Right. And this is just, I think the main good thing about Revelation, I mean, people are told there at the end that there's a blessing if you read it, is not only it gives you a heads up on what's going to happen, but because we talk about it so much, and we've been talking about it as a church for over 1,000 years, close to 2, that people know about it. I mean, they know about the 4 horsemen, they know about the 2 witnesses, and these things are going to come to mind. Yeah. So let's see. So by process of elimination, by deduction and all sorts of things, we can go, well, okay, we're just meeting the 2 witnesses, but they've been doing their thing for 3.5 years, and then they're killed outside of the city. It says in verse 8 that is figuratively, and it says that, words to that effect in the Greek, called Sodom and Egypt, where their master was crucified. This is Jerusalem. So that's where the 2 witnesses have been, outside of Jerusalem. And people speculate on, well, is this the law and the prophets? Is this the church in Israel? What or who are these 2 individuals? And some people, they're not individuals at all. They're just representatives. But you can't kill representatives. You can't kill allegories. You can't kill nations like that,
Well, it also doesn't make sense to me that if it was just representatives of groups, that they would be given the powers that they have.
Right. It seems, from every description that
or be laying dead for 3 days.
Yeah. What would that mean? And people are sending gifts to each other. It's like, these sure sound like ordinary people to me, mortals. And speculating on who they are, if even getting people to that point where these are 2 human beings, who are they? Some people say that they should be representing to Israel the law and the prophets, therefore Moses and Elijah. Elijah never died. He was taken in a whirlwind. His body was not on the earth. But Moses did, but nobody knows where his body is. But he died. On the other hand, Enoch never died either. And he was before the flood, whereas Elijah was after. So there's a good argument for saying this is Enoch and Elijah.
Somebody in the chat said that Sodom and Egypt and Jerusalem are 3 different places, but the scripture, if you have your Bible open right now and reading along, you'll see that it says that it's figurative. Sodom and Egypt are figurative.
Right.
Or
it says where their master was crucified. I mean, he was not crucified in literal Egypt or literal Sodom. He was crucified outside literal Jerusalem. So, I mean, it's explained right there in the text. Sorry, you're muted.
You're muted. Can you hear me now? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're unmuted now. Okay, you're good.
Really
your good's going.
All right, my stupid computer, it's lagging, so I couldn't tell if it was okay. Anyways, but it specifically says figurative. So what is?
Yeah.
If
it's just how
people opened their Bibles and read along with us, they would have saw that.
Yeah, I mean, and pretty much all the translations agree, and it's like. It's saying right here, it's called Sodom and Egypt, but this is what it really means is this is where their master was crucified. That's Jerusalem. There's no doubt about that. So anyway, where their master was crucified, there being the these two witnesses. But, you know, anybody before the cross, any righteous person certainly would count him as their master anyway. So who can say? It just, you know, it's another speculation that just people get upset about, but it's not worth getting upset about. It just doesn't tell us, and we don't need to know. You know, we'll know them by their actions and the time that they do this. But I think there's no room for doubt in saying these are human beings who can be killed, and they will be doing their thing outside of Jerusalem for 3.5 years. So that's another sign of the beginning of the actual 7 years, is when these two witnesses appear. You know? So it is, you know, it's further, like you were saying, you know, the people will gawk at their bodies for 3.5 days. And if 3.5 is all over the place here. And they send presents to each other, which some people are like, well, this has got to be near the end of the tribulation because all the seals and trumpets and bowls at the same time. And I'm like, look, by the end of the tribulation, people are not going to be sending gifts to each other. They're just not. It gets way worse than this. And there's already been a large portion of the earth killed or ruined. And even at this point, with the thirds and the fourths, there are some people at least who can still send gifts to each other. So that is a factor to me saying, no, this cannot be the end of the tribulation. Middle at the latest, you know, because there are people who can still send each other presents. Just another one of those little details. You are muted in case you don't know. I don't know if you're trying to say anything, but if I just keep going on, it's because I can't hear you.
No, I'm good. I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. So anyway, they rise from the dead. They hear a voice from heaven, and the two witnesses rise from the dead and come up. And that freaks people out finally so bad, because they've actually finally witnessed what they've been demanding to witness ever since. Like, you know, I never saw Jesus rise from the dead. I never saw any this or that rise from the dead. It's like, here you go. Happy now? No, they're terrified. And they finally, unlike the end of the previous chapter, these people at this point, nothing that happened before then was good enough to scare them that bad. But this time they're like finally saying, giving glory to God, which is something significant. You know, it wasn't anything else that moved them to do that. But this, right, watching these people rise from the dead after 3.5 days of laying in the street, that's pretty freaky. And so it does get them to finally wake up.
Well, and not only that, but they had been pretty much, well, punishing them. And so they're not going to want people that were punishing them to, or I don't even want to say punishing them, but
tormenting.
What was it? Yes. Well, and wasn't it in response to their mockery and stuff too? More like
it says anyone who attacked them.
Right. So it was basically a defensive tactic. Yeah.
So
and they're not going to want that to be available again to them.
Right. Yeah. After finally, 3.5 years of torment because they would attack them and they would get tormented in return. And then they finally, the Satan himself comes up from the abyss and kills them. And then they rise again anyway. That's like, whoa.
Yeah, and I guarantee they still won't turn to God.
Well, some of them do here. Not everybody, but it says some of them do. It doesn't say how many, but
well, let's hope so. When somebody's being raised from the dead,
yeah, you would think. But I don't know. We remember from Israel that they saw God part the Red Sea, and it still wasn't enough.
Isn't that crazy?
People are weird.
Yeah.
And anyway, third woe, the seventh trumpet, is when they sing this song that is where Handel got his lyrics for the Messiah, the Hallelujah chorus. Got it straight out of Revelation, where it says, the kingdom of this world belongs to our Lord and to his Christ, and he reigns forever and ever. That's that line. That's verse 15. The seventh trumpet. That's where Handel, whatever you want to pronounce it, got those lyrics. Then we meet the 24 elders again. We saw them before the seal judgments were opened and started, and everybody's praising God because it says, like, we were started out this discussion, this part, you have taken your great power and assumed your reign. So God is in control officially now, but he's still got a few more things to do to clean up the place before he comes down. It's just, like we said, there could be other ways to interpret that, but that's what I'm thinking. So
that's how it seems to be.
Yeah. It says the nations were angry and your rage or wrath came, and now is the time for the dead to be judged. And so it still takes a bit of time, takes a few years. But he says two kinds of repayments here, not he, but these elders and so forth in heaven, to repay your slaves, the prophets, and the small and the great who fear your name, and then the negative one, to ruin those who ruin the earth, or destroy those who destroy the earth. So finally, God is paying attention. He knows that there are people who are ruining the earth he made, and he's going to pay them back finally with these judgments to come. So that's the last minute business, I guess, the second half of the tribulation is when he's going to destroy those who destroy the earth. And so this is
the other one, and reward your servants, the prophets. That's like the avenging of the blood of the saints. Is that the same?
Yeah, and I think this is actually absolutely it, and we'll hear more about that when we do the bowl judgments.
Yeah.
Okay. They're going to say that actually, and then at the end here it says the temple in heaven was open, and you could see the Ark of the Covenant, so that's where it is, and there's all this stuff coming out of it: lightning, rumblings, thunder, earthquake, and large hail. So that's how the seventh trumpet goes. And now we're going to get into chapter 12, which is the woman clothed with the sun. And then later we'll meet the woman riding the beast, which I call the other woman in Revelation. And she's going to be like in chapter 17, I think. This seventh trumpet, it's either, people argue it doesn't matter whether it's part of the trumpet or a pause between the trumpets and the bowl judgments. There's a whole bunch of chapters to go. Just between those two things. So that's what 12, like I said, through about 16 or 17, is all a bunch of things that are either part of the seventh trumpet or between it and the first bowl, just to give some kind of heads up as to where we are on the map. And there are lots of maps. You can go to my site, and I have documentary with some charts in it, and there's all sorts of other Revelation timeline charts that you can find. They're going to conflict. Everybody's got different opinions as to timeline, but this is at least, the best I'm doing right now. I'm just looking at the text. I'm not looking at any of my notes. I'd had all sorts of windows open and things kept crashing, so I had to close them all. So I'm going just from memory. So hopefully I'm not leaving out anything too important, but I wish I could show you the charts too at the same time, but oh well. So let me go on to chapter 12 and we'll see how far we get. Let's see, we've been going, about an hour. Okay, that's not too bad. All right, chapter 12.
I'm still good to go.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, let's go ahead.
All right. A great sign was seen in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon beneath her feet, and a victor's crown of 12 stars on her head. She is pregnant and crying out because of the torture of labor pains as she's giving birth. Another sign was also seen in heaven. These are signs. And look, a huge fiery dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, with each head wearing a royal crown. Its tail dragged a third of the stars out of the sky and threw them onto the earth. It stood before the woman with the intention of consuming the child as soon as it was born. She gave birth to a male child who was to shepherd all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was snatched up to God and his throne. And the woman fled into the desert, where there is a place prepared by God. There they will nourish her for 1,260 days. Then there was war in heaven. Michael and his messengers fought against the dragon and its messengers fought back. Messengers being angels, of course. But they were not strong enough, and there was no more place for them in heaven. So the great dragon, the ancient serpent, called the false accuser and the adversary, who misleads the whole inhabited world, was thrown along with his messengers to the earth. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, "Now salvation, power, and the kingdom of our God has arrived, as well as the jurisdiction of his anointed, because the accuser of our sisters and brothers, the one who accused them before God day and night, has been thrown out. They conquered him by means of the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, even to the point of giving up their lives. On account of this, be happy, all you who live in heaven. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the false accuser has come down to you and is filled with great rage, seeing that his time is short. Now, when the dragon saw that it had been thrown down to the earth, it pursued the woman that had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, so that she could fly from the presence of the serpent into the desert to her place to be nourished for a time, times, and half a time. So the serpent shot out from its mouth water like a river, so it would carry her off. But the earth helped the woman and opened up its mouth to swallow the river that the dragon had shot out of its mouth. The dragon then went off in a rage and prepared to do battle with the rest of her offspring, who guard the injunctions of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And it stood on the seashore. Okay, that's chapter 12. We want to go ahead.
Oh, you can go ahead.
All right. We will go on, but there's a lot of things that need comment in there. This is a sign, first of all. He's seeing several signs here. So this is kind of a break between the sequence of the seals and then the trumpets, and we've gone through all 7 of each of those 2 things, and now we're seeing signs in heaven. Okay, so this is kind of telling us that this is an interruption of the sequence, and there's some things you can deduce from reading it that are happening on earth and some things in heaven. And so here again, we can't be really hard and fast on our interpretations, but it's still an interesting, worthwhile thing to try to figure these things out, because the Bible does commend people who try to search out God's ways. But this is a sign, and we all know about the thing that was aligned this past September, where the constellation Virgo had the sun and the moon and the stars, and the man-child being Jupiter, and the dragon being Draco that could only be seen in infrared, and it looked like a red dragon with yellow eyes. And so it's all very interesting, but even at the time, people were saying, well, this is when the rapture happens or the tribulation starts or something like that. I'm like, look, it's a sign. Signs usually precede what they're about. You see a sign before you get somewhere. So I'm like, I don't think anything's going to happen. And of course, all the critics were saying that too, but I'm like, well, I have a different reason, at least.
Well, I agree. I think that signs can point to past, something present and future, but
yeah,
I think that they were just jumping the gun because, to know that it's a sign, they have to keep that open, the fact that it could point to past, present, or future. So they can't just automatically say, oh, well, then it's going to happen. But I wanted to bring up, if you didn't care, but I know this might be skipped a few verses because you might want to go through each verse or something, but the 1,260 days after we just read that with the witnesses, it's very interesting, right? Because that pretty much shows that there may be a connection there as far as timeline, right?
Well, I'm thinking it can be both, because it says they will nourish her. Okay.
They will what? You broke up.
I'm sorry. It says they will nourish her.
Oh, okay.
In this passage. So it's hard to say, but you make a good point that just like the 2 witnesses, it could be a flashback to the beginning. But when I match it up to Matthew and things like that, other prophetic scriptures, I'm kind of leading toward it being the second half of the tribulation, or also known as the Great Tribulation, for a lot of different reasons that would take a long time to go through, and I don't want to bog it down right now, but I've, the material I have at my commentary or the prophecy page that I've linked.
That would make sense, though. What you're saying would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be, but like I said, there's always a little detail that helps me lean one way or the other. And this one, I'm thinking, because of what Jesus said, how he described that there will be Israelites, faithful ones, righteous ones, who see the abomination, for example, and they go to this place in the desert for 1,260 days, or a time times and half a time. And that time times half a time goes straight back to Daniel. And Jesus mentioned Daniel in Matthew 24 when he says that, as the prophet Daniel said, let the reader pay attention that about the abomination of desolation. And he says that, that's the middle. Daniel says that's the middle. So here we are seeing terminology like Daniel used here after the 7th trumpet. So I think the 7th trumpet is about the middle of the tribulation. and that would leave 3.5 years. So, I'm kind of looking forward with that. That's just my opinion, but that's why I think it because of Daniel mainly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it makes sense.
Let's see, and then she'll be nourished there for that length of time. And I think this again goes back to Matthew, where Jesus gives the illustration of the sheep and goat judgments, and he describes it as when he comes back in his kingdom and he sets up his throne. That's what happens at the beginning of the millennium after the tribulation, and that he's going to separate the sheep and the goats on the basis of how they treated a third group, the least of these. And who are they? I think they are these Jews who run to the place of safety. I could be wrong. I mean, they've been on the earth for 3.5 years. Obviously, they're still alive. And yet they are being taken to this place in the desert prepared for them, and they'll be preserved. And
right, because they'll be the ones repopulating.
I believe so, at least part of them, because we'll also have the sheep, who treated them well. During the first half, at least. So anyway, more about the women and the stars and all that. This illustration of the woman with the stars and the sun and the moon goes right back to the account in the Old Testament of Joseph. Joseph with the coat of many colors, most people know him as. But he was one of the 12 sons of Jacob / Israel. Head of the, that he didn't originally have a tribe named after him, but eventually, I guess he did, and then it was name of Benjamin here in Revelation, his little brother. But Joseph had dreams, and one of those dreams, he said that the sun, moon, and stars, and sun, moon, and 11 stars all bowed down to him, and they took offense at him because they said, "Are we, your mother, father, and brothers going to all bow to you?" And they were mad at him. But this is the 12 tribes of Israel. And so this woman with the stars, the sun, and the moon is telling us this is the nation of Israel. I know there's a lot of disagreement about that, but I'm looking at the Old Testament going, wow, that matches up Joseph's dream perfectly of the beginning of Israel. And it's from Israel that the man-child came. And who's the man-child? Well, it's by description is absolutely Jesus. There's no doubt about who that is. Some people do disagree anyway, but ruling with a rod of iron is a description of the Messiah, and nobody doubts that. And that's how this child is described. Well, the child, as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, the Greeks at that time believed that the body grew out of the head, and the head is usually born first, and then the body follows. And so this would be the case with Jesus being the head of the church, and the body is the church. Okay, we're called the body of Christ. That this is being illustrated here by the fact that the child is born, and it wasn't Jesus who was snatched up right away. It's the church who gets snatched up right away. And that the serpent is waiting to devour the child, the whole child. And he started with, when Herod killed all the baby boys 2 years old and younger to try to kill Jesus because the Magi had told him about him and then took off and didn't tell him where he was. So he just said, I'm going to wipe out all the babies 2 years old and younger. And so this is the kind of really matches up well with the dragon waiting to devour the child as soon as it was born. But then the child was snatched up to God and his throne. That didn't happen right away. That happened, maybe we could say it happened to Jesus himself on the Mount of when he ascended. But it also seems to indicate the church as the body of Christ, which leads some people to say this is when the rapture happens at the midpoint of the tribulation.
Well,
so you can go ahead.
Sorry. That's what I've been considering too. Like, I know that it's certainly either pre or mid, and I've been considering the midpoint as well. But I think you're right in what these characters represent, because Jesus is also referred to as the first fruits, and
right
here we are. We're the body. He's the head. It makes complete sense that it would be this man-child would be both him and the body, the believers.
Right, and we have a timing gap issue to consider as well. If we look at Daniel 9, which is again what the preterists do, is they take all 70 weeks as in succession. There's no break, even though it says at the 69th he'll be cut off. And then there will be all these wars and lots of stuff happen. And then the coming prince that makes the 7-year treaty. They kind of ignore the stuff that happens between those, the 69th and 70th. But so I use that as a precedent for what I'm going to say here, because it's in one sentence in Daniel. That whole prophecy is in one paragraph, but it says, that the coming prince will be cut off and have nothing. And then all these wars and all these things happen. And then the prince that comes, will make a treaty for 7 years and then it'll be broken. So there's like a huge gap in one sentence there between the 69th and 70th week of Daniel, a huge gap that's going on 2,000 years. So what I'm saying, that I take that as a precedent and then apply it here, because this does match Daniel so well, that there's a shifting here between the vision looking at the past when Jesus was born, when Israel gave birth to the church. She gave birth to the Messiah and the church, and then the child is snatched, maybe not right away, hasn't happened yet, but we haven't seen a lot of other prophecies happen yet. But the child is snatched, could still represent the pre-trib rapture. And then it switches to the present, where the woman flees to the desert for 1,260 days. That has never happened. It didn't happen in 70 AD when Titus came and sieged Jerusalem. And it was only the Christians who left historically. It wasn't the Jews, because they didn't believe anything Jesus said. They didn't listen to him tell him about, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, take off. And the Christians did not go to the mountains or the wilderness. They went to some place. It starts with an A. I can never remember it. But it's not even in the highlands. And the time that Jesus said that in Matthew, he's talking about going to the place in the mountains. And this place that the Christians went to wasn't even the mountains. But so Jesus also does the overlap, the time warp kind of a thing, just like Daniel did. And I think it's happening again here, because it seems to me that this would have to be the case in order to match up with prophecies about the future, where Israel is protected for the last 3.5 years. So, and here again, we see 1,260 days applied to the good people, whereas the 42 months are applied to the bad people, the trampling of the city, and also that 1,260 days for the 2 witnesses. So just something to take note of. But I do think this is the midpoint of the tribulation that we're at in these signs. But these are signs. But at the same time, it says, she gave birth to the child and she fled to the desert, to the place prepared by God. Some people think this is Petra. The city of stone, might be. And it's interesting. I studied Petra, and they had an ingenious system of dealing with a once-a-year monsoon. You would think out here in the desert, at the southern end of the Dead Sea, that this wouldn't happen. But once a year, they would get this deluge, and they made ruts and gullies and things to disperse the water when it came. And it was actually an oasis at that time, because of how they handled the water and everything. I guess that doesn't happen anymore, but there is evidence in the stones and things that these people made these little grooves in the rocks and things, that whether they were rocks or not is a whole nother story. But anyway, what you can examine today is grooves in the rocks that shunted the water and made the place an oasis, and they could store the water and use it, and caravans would stop there. So it could be Petra. It's just a really interesting place, and it's about the place where they could run to. So that's just speculation again, but it's something that could certainly pass for that. And a place prepared by God, I don't know, could be. But probably of more interest is the war in heaven, which also seems to look backward and forward. It says Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels, and Michael's angels won. And we know from Job that even after the flood, Satan is allowed access to the throne of God. And it says even in other places in the New Testament that this accuser is still accusing us at the present time And while Jesus is our advocate or defender or defense attorney, we've got a prosecutor and a defense attorney, and Jesus is defending us because we belong to him, and the dragon, Satan, is our accuser. Well, at this point, the midpoint, it seems to me, Satan is barred access anymore. He's not allowed to bring his case anymore against people, and he's thrown out because they have this insurrection right there in heaven. And so they lose, so they're kicked out for good. They're never allowed back there again. And the description in verse 9 leaves nothing to the imagination. The dragon, the serpent, the false accuser, the adversary. The devil, Satan, that's what those words, the names mean. And by calling him the serpent, it also goes back to Genesis. So this is why we can say that the serpent is Satan back in Genesis, making the temptation. So an adversary. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to address Victoria, because Victoria was talking about the rapture and everything. And while ago I said, I've been considering both pre-trib and mid. To me, it makes more sense of a pre-trib, because when we started the Revelation series, we sit there and read where they were already in the heavens when the seals were being broken. So it makes more sense to me that it's pre. But when I bring up that I'm also considering mid, it's because it's got to be one or the other. It's not going to be during the wrath for certain. So I was just going to say that. And then I was going to ask you, Paula, if I could go and get a drink before you start 13.
Okay, sure. I was just going to say that
I'll be right back.
Yeah, what seals it for me, pun intended, seals it for me as being pre-trib is the fact that everyone agrees the church does not suffer the wrath of God, and that the wrath of God is acknowledged even in the seals. So to me, we have to be out of here before the seals are open. And this is after all the seals, after all the trumpets. So that's why I'm still pre-trib. Even though it's possible from this section, you could go back and say that, that it could be mid-trib. It still has to be pre-wrath of God. And I don't see any way around the problem of the wrath of God happening during the seals, is how I take it. Let me take a look at the chat while she's busy and see what's going on. Plenty of moderators, so I'm sure everything's fine. Let's see. Very nice comment there. Thank you about the Flat Out Elected channel. Hopefully we'll get Rand back one of these days. He's been busy with all sorts of life events and business events. Let's see. Yeah. Flat Earth is an awakening, certainly not the big one. This is the big one. Being Christianity and the gospel is really the big awakening. It's funny to me in a way, not ha-ha funny, but funny to me that so many people, when they talk about Flat Earth changing their lives, they want to go out and evangelize, they want to meet together. This all sounds like Christian groups to me. We've been doing this for a long time. We have a really big head start on all that evangelizing and zeal and changing your life and spreading the good news. We've been at that for quite a while, and the Flat Earth community is just catching up. So, but it's funny that they talk that way, in Flat Earth, even the unbelievers, the ones who are very hostile to Christianity. It's like, man, you know what? If you just changed the names, you'd have the same thing. That's just how I see it. Let's see. Second half of Daniel's 70th week. Is the sheep and goat judgment related to the wheat and tares? Possibly. It does talk about the angels and the end of the tribulation by description of, being the separation. So the separation certainly matches up. And later here in Revelation, we'll see a lot more reaping and harvesting terms. So it's probably, I would lean that way at least, that the parable about the wheat and tares would probably have its final harvest then. But even so, even though it hasn't been harvested yet, we are seeing the difference between wheat and tares become more obvious. And that's what they did when they, the literal wheat and tares to tell apart while they were growing, which is why you wouldn't want to pull them up too soon, because you might pull up the wheat. Then that Jesus told in that parable, that's what the farmer said, and that you had to wait until maturity, and it's only at maturity when they're ripe that you could tell the difference between the two. And if we're starting to see such blatant difference between good and evil, we got to know that the harvest is just about ready to be reaped. Are you back yet, Eve? Okay, apparently not yet. All right, so we'll look some more at the chat. Let's see. More speculation on trying to allegorize everything. This is a vision. Yes, it is so-called apocalyptic literature, which apocalypse just means revealing, not hiding. But I don't think when you look at the rest of how the Bible itself interprets all these things and describes them in other passages, in the Old Testament especially, but also in the Gospels, I don't see that degree of allegorization being justified from the scriptures. I just don't. And it is even more confusing, because when you allegorize that far, you might as well throw the whole thing out, because it can mean whatever you want it to mean. That's the problem with spiritualizing or allegorizing the scriptures without anything to go on in the scriptures, is that you're just making up whatever you want it to be. And nobody can tell you you're wrong, because you got nothing to go on in the scriptures that's, objective. So there has to be some kind of anchor in reality to go by, in my opinion. I think it just causes more confusion when people say that, it's just an allegory of good and evil, or John was a bitter old man on the Isle of Patmos, or something like that. I've heard all kinds of theories. None of that's new. Yes, Jesus is the truth, but that doesn't hardly mean that everything in the Bible is an allegory. That's really a giant leap that I don't think is reasonable to make. So, anyway, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm sorry. Zach had to use the restroom, so I had to deal with them for a minute.
Okay. No problem at all. I was just reading through the chat mostly, and just kind of catching up on that. So, okay. You were walking away. I don't know if you heard me say why I believe that the rapture is still before the seals, because of it being the wrath of God.
Right. I think that there's, I agree with you that it makes more sense that the wrath is part of the seals, but I think there's also disagreement on when the wrath starts.
Right. Right.
I know for absolute 100% certain is that we don't face the wrath. So
right. I mean, everybody agrees on that. All the positions are pre-wrath, but it is, when does the wrath begin? And all I keep going back to is that even by the sixth seal, people on earth are saying, hide us from the wrath of God and the wrath of the Lamb. So
right.
No later than
then.
And
it makes sense. Yeah, and it also makes sense that it would, I wouldn't even think that it would be starting then. I would think that it would start with the first seal, because it also makes sense regarding the people
judgment
already being present when the seals are broken. Yeah.
That too. And the fact that the elders are there, and that they are absolutely humans who have been redeemed, and there's 24 and all that. Yeah. So yeah, I think too that it's the first seal, because Jesus opens the seal and the first horseman goes out on the earth and takes peace, and conquers. So how can that not be the wrath of God? That's the part I don't get. One other thing I forgot to go over in chapter 12 is that the dragon goes off in a rage to do battle with the rest of her offspring. Well, who is that? Who else? Her being Israel doesn't mean the church necessarily, because the man-child is the head in the body. Jesus is the head of the church, his body, but other children are not the church, not the body. So who are they? Well, go ahead.
Wouldn't it be the tribulation saints?
I'm sure that includes that, because he's about to go off and do battle against them. Certainly that's the first layer of meaning. And that's what I would also point out again, the uniqueness of the church, because before the church, there were saints. And I think after the church, there will be saints. And the testimony of Jesus is something at least the tribulation saints can look back on So it fits to me. I totally agree with you that these are probably tribulation saints, although not the church, because the body has already been snatched up.
Right.
Just how I see it.
That's what makes more sense to me. Yeah.
So let me go on to 13. Then I saw, and every time I'm going to be reading wild animal, that's beast. That's just a general Greek word for wild animals, beast. But you know, in Revelation, people have this idea of a specific beast, and that's true, but we get it from context. But anyway, this is where we're meeting the beast. Okay, so I'll just read through like I've been. Then I saw a wild animal rise out of the sea, and it had 10 horns and 7 heads. On each horn was a royal crown, and on each head was a slanderous name. This wild animal was like a leopard, with a bear's paws and a lion's mouth. The dragon gave this wild animal his power, his throne, and wide-ranging jurisdiction. One of the wild animal's heads appeared to have sustained a mortal wound, but was healed. The whole earth was astounded at the wild animal, and they worshipped the dragon for giving jurisdiction to it. They said, "Who is like the wild animal, and who can fight it?" The wild animal was given a mouth with which to speak great and slanderous things, and its jurisdiction would be for 42 months. It opened up its mouth to slander God and his name and his sanctuary and all who live in heaven. And it was allowed to do battle with the holy people and conquer them, as well as to have jurisdiction over all tribes, people groups, languages, and non-Judeans. And all the earth dwellers will worship it, whose names have not been written in the scroll of the life of the Lamb who had been slaughtered from the establishment of the world. Whoever has an ear had better listen. If anyone is to go into captivity, they will be taken. If anyone is to be killed with the sword, they will be killed. Such is the endurance and faith of the holy people. Then I saw another wild animal ascending out of the earth, and it had 2 horns like a lamb, but spoke like a dragon. It wields all the jurisdiction of the first wild animal and makes all the earth dwellers worship it, the one who was healed of the fatal wound. It does great miraculous signs, such as making fire fall from the sky to the earth in front of everyone, and it misleads the earth dwellers through the signs it was given to do in the presence of the first wild animal. It told them to make an image of the wild animal that had the fatal wound but lived. It was allowed to give spirit to the image of the wild animal so that it could talk, and to put to death anyone who would refuse to worship the image. It also makes everyone, small or great, rich or poor, free or slave, to accept an inscription on their right hand or forehead. No one will be able to buy or sell without having the inscription of either the name or the number of the wild animal. This takes wisdom. Let the one with insight compute the number of the wild animal, because it is the number of a person. The number is 666. Okay, chapter 13. All right, let me go back then. So, wild animal, beast. This is the beast that people hear about, but they always get it confused with the second beast. And most people who just dabble in Revelation don't even know there are 2 beasts. And that the second one, as we'll see later, is also called the false prophet. It has a different description than the first beast, but they're both beasts, and they're both co-running the world at this time. Okay? And the description, the leopard, the bear's paws, the lion's mouth, is Old Testament description. It goes back to Daniel and so forth. As did, I forgot to mention, with the 2 witnesses, the 2 olive trees and lampstands is also from the Old Testament. If you go back and read that. Also, the 4 horsemen are described in the Old Testament. And I just, didn't think to go back to those, and I don't have my notes right now, so I'm just thinking of these things, and I can't really show you. It's easier to show than to tell, because it gets confusing, and it's confusing enough already, so I'm not going to go into that. But just know that these things have Old Testament references. But so this description is tying back to Daniel again, with the bear's paws, lion's mouth, and being like a leopard. These are all 3 of the 4 animals that are described in Daniel. And so this is the end time beast by description. And that this beast gets its power from Satan and is acting on Satan's behalf. So this is, after the seals and the trumpets is the only time where the beast is revealed, but it's possible that, like the 2 witnesses, this has been going on for 3.5 years. We don't know. I'm just saying this is where we're hearing about it. And the head with the mortal wound, it says, first of all, appeared to have sustained a mortal wound. So we have to understand that it was not necessarily an actual mortal wound, but an appearance. And people say this person will have a head wound. No, because these heads are people. Each head is a person. These are kings, and we're going to find out more about that later. But these are kings and kingdoms. And so this king will be killed or appear to be killed and then resurrected. So this is a fake resurrection. And that's why people follow this being as God, pretty much. Okay? And they're saying, who is like the beast and who can fight it? And saying that, and this is something Satan has always tried to do, never been able to really duplicate a true resurrection of the dead. He's always had to fake things. And this will be the ultimate fake. And so this is, I think, at least, now we know from other scriptures that the great deception, the strong delusion, is from God to people who hate truth. So this is not that. But it also says, Jesus said, be sure that you're not deceived, and that this beast is going to do all these signs and wonders to convince people that he's God. And this is certainly the big one, appearing at least to have risen from the dead. But anyway, it curses the God of heaven all the time. And this is what a lot of people are starting to do already with the ancient religion that they think is new because they don't know history or they throw it away, of rejecting the bumbling demiurge God of the Old Testament that they think is Yahweh but is not. It's another deception. Anyway, they're being prepared for this kind of deception and led into it even now. But it's saying that this beast will be worshipped for appearing to rise from the dead, and they will fight against holy people. Anyone who still worships God will be hunted down and killed. And so, but it says also about the mark of the beast, so-called. Okay? And it says that they will have the power to kill anyone whose name were not written in the scroll of life, the book of life of the Lamb. But it's actually the second beast also will be called the false prophet, who does a lot of the things attributed to the first beast and does it in his name on his behalf. Okay? So this is the second beast of verse 11, and it appears to be a lamb but talks like a dragon. That is the quintessential wolf in sheep's clothing. Okay, so this is a religious deception. The first beast is more secular. The second one is religious, and I believe it will match up to the woman riding the beast that we'll see about in a little while. So this is the... go ahead, sorry.
Do you think that's possible? It's the RCC?
Yes.
Or the Pope?
Or at least the office of the Pope in the Vatican. Absolutely. I believe that's what the woman riding the beast is by description, that we'll get to. The other woman, she's in chapter 17. I don't know if we'll get that far today, but at least this one, this second beast, aka later the false prophet, is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and so it's going to pretend to be the Christian church.
Yeah, and that is obvious with what you just said, and with it in verse 11 saying that it appears to be a lamb but spoke with the voice of a dragon. Absolutely
right.
A false reputation.
False church. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but it's got a really interesting description too about doing miracles and pointing to the first beast as the one that rose from the dead. So there you go. That's a Christian thing. Here again, it's not all religions. It's the Christian religion, the only religion that claims to have a founder who rose from the dead. It can't be anything else. So this is a fake Christianity that is the world religion, so to speak. And so it misleads and misdirects and deceives people. And it's the one who told people to make an image of the first beast. And this image is given lifelike qualities. And this is where we get the mark of the beast. Okay, so it's actually the second beast, the false prophet, that causes the mark of the beast. Okay, and everyone without exception is supposed to accept, and the word is inscription in the Greek. It means something etched. It's more like a tattoo where you dig into the skin or dig into whatever material is. That's what an etching is. Some people say it is a microchip. It does go into the skin, but this is not being described here as our personal ID, which is an RFID chip would be. At least that's the way it's used now. It says that it's the name or the number of the first beast. And it's an inscription. So it's not our ID, it's the beast's ID. It's like, go ahead.
With it being having the capabilities of tracking the buying and selling, it could be an updated form of like the RFID.
Could be. But still, it just says it's the beast name or number. The beast name or number. You know what I'm saying? It would be like saying an American passport or something like that, you know? Your social security number would be kind of, it's your unique ID, but at the same time, it identifies you as a citizen. And this is, by almost unanimous agreement of scholars, is a pledge of loyalty to the beast. At least has to include that, I'll say that. Okay, it's going to go in your skin on your right hand or your forehead, and it's going to be the beast's name or number. That's all I can get from the description here. That's all I'm saying.
It would definitely make sense that it would show on the outside of the skin.
Right.
At least to me, it makes sense that it would show on the outside of the skin, because that's why they're doing it in the first place, to be able to track people.
Right. And here again, John is describing it, so he can see it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But I still think it may have some components that, far as like the technology, it just shows these days that we have the technology for this to be done. We could see that with the RFID chip.
Right. And there's also wearable tattoos that are electronic. You know, they can tattoo a circuit into your skin. So it could be both. You know, instead of a capsule, like their RFID chip right now is a capsule, they can etch a circuit on your skin. So who knows? All we know is that,
because they have,
go ahead.
Sorry, on the newer credit cards, they have those little chips, you know, that you can see. It's not just like hidden or anything. So it's definitely, the technology is definitely there.
Yeah, and that thing in the chat about it being the globe, I'm sorry, it is not. There's so much more that's a deception.
Well, and I know the person in the chat said look at all the 666 attachment to the globe. Well, 666 is everywhere when it comes to this system, and that's because Satan runs it and they love the number. That's
right.
It doesn't mean that it's what we're talking about.
I just think that's bad logic myself. I mean, that's just such a wild leap. But anyway, what the text gives us is it's the beast name or number. What that number signifies, it just says, let the one with wisdom compute it. And I leave that up to the code people. I never really saw the point, because nobody's ever good. People don't agree. And, you know, people have been speculating for quite a long time.
And that might be why they put it everywhere too, so that just to cause confusion and so that people won't be able to figure it out.
No doubt. Well, let's see. Let's look ahead and see what we got in 13, whether we're at a good breaking point or not. Okay. There's a little bit, I'm looking at 13. They're saying more about beasts here, so I might have to continue if you guys are okay with that. Because we're getting these two beasts described again. I don't think there's 4 beasts. Nobody does, but they're going to be described again in different ways. So I don't know if do you think we should go on?
Talking about in chapter 14 they're described? Is that what you're saying?
Let's see. Whoops, I went back too far. Sorry. Yeah, 14. Because, let's see. Did I click on the wrong number? Oh, it just hadn't refreshed the page. Sorry.
I don't see it in chapter 14.
Yeah, no, it was 13. I thought I had clicked on the next chapter to look ahead, and it didn't reload the page. So sorry, I was confusing people. Sorry about that. But there are other descriptions. It's just that I was like, wait a minute, I thought I just read that. Hold on. 14, it can be a break a little bit.
I think we should break it there
Okay.
because it looks like it's going into kind of a little bit of a different.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we've been going a while. We've gone 8 through 13. So let's see.
And I'm wanting to talk about this this Sophia robot thing.
Okay. All right, we'll stop there, and I'll keep that up at 14 so I don't forget where I'm at for next time.
I don't know if the audience is aware, but there's this robot called Sophia that just spoke at the UN about artificial intelligence, and if you go and watch that whole thing, that's very interesting what's being said on there, and them trying to say that they want to make robots as close to humans as possible, and want to make them, benevolent. And it's just, I'm like, this is human extinction right here. This is the path to human extinction. But I was wondering, I was wanting to bring it up because I was wondering, and I was going to ask you if you think it had anything to do with this image of the beast and being able to talk.
Well, it's probably a forerunner. I mean, we know the technology we see is nothing like what they've got, but I think for people who are aware of this technology, that if they were to see this and that's all it was, they wouldn't be impressed. I don't know. What do you think?
No, but I'm saying, like you just kind of said, that they've got technology that's a little bit more advanced than we really know about. What I'm saying is it possible that it could be a robot, not necessarily known to be a robot? They're trying to make it as human as possible. Is what?
Yeah, that's true. I see what you're saying. Yeah, anything's possible.
Yeah. And it could even fool them into the whole resurrection thing too if it's a robotic.
Yeah. But I think because of the fate of the beasts, both of them, that those are not the robots. Those are actual humans.
That's a good point.
Yeah, they wouldn't bother throwing a
both of them
robot
get tossed
into the lake of fire. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think for that reason. But the image is another question. It's
or there might even be some integration. But yeah, I was thinking about the image as well.
Yeah, and everybody, it's saying throughout, a couple places in Revelation that people haven't given up worshiping their idols that can't see or hear or talk. So, apparently we're still, and some people allegorize that or interpret it to mean that people are still worshiping their sports idols or their jobs or their, whatever it is. But here again, I think it's one of those things that are going to make sense to the people who see it happen, But the thing is that they're going to worship this thing for sure, this image, whatever image means. Some people will say it's a hologram even. But I don't think, it maybe, again, who knows what technology they've got now. But whatever it is, it'll be pretty impressive.
Right. Well, this robot's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, and
pretty freaky.
Yeah, I've seen some of those footage, and it's like, wow, they're getting better at that. Some of the early ones I used to see, a decade ago or so, they were like, yeah, you got a ways to go, but that's pretty impressive even then, what they could do. And we know
how quickly it's advancing, all the technology that they even put in front,
Well, that's another Daniel thing. Knowledge will be increased. Toward Daniel 11, I think it is.
Yeah.
So
it's so quick, and I just don't see how so many people are not seeing how close we are. There's people that know we're in the end times, but they don't realize how close. Because it just seems like it's so very close. The technology is all there for all of this to happen.
Yeah, I might just make one little comment on something in the chat here about the Sophia, as they named her obviously after the Gnostic Sophia, meaning, which is the Greek word for wisdom. That's all it is. You'll find it in Proverbs in the Septuagint and the Hebrew equivalent. But this is just a personification. It's a literary device of saying, wisdom calls out in the streets, just like we have sin and death are personified in the New Testament. But there is a teaching of that in Gnosticism, which is battled against in Paul's writing to Timothy when he's talking about the genealogies and things like that, and he corrects them by saying, no, Adam was made first and then Eve, and because the Gnostics believed it was backwards and that Eve imparted wisdom to Adam and so forth. And so, yeah, there is that false teaching element. But as far as the Holy Spirit being female, spirit and gender don't match. I mean, they're not gendered. God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should change his mind, as it says in the Old Testament. We got to be careful, especially in English, that we don't make too much of a theology out of a pronoun, because in Hebrew, and in Greek, they have inflection, which means that the pronouns and nouns are gendered, and they have to match, and that's how we know which pronoun goes with which noun, because sentence order is not as important as it is in English. So you match it up by these word endings, and in Hebrew, the word for Holy Spirit, or the word for just spirit really, is feminine. So you would have to use her with it or she with it. That's as far as it goes. It's not a biological gender, because God is not biological and spirit is not flesh. In Greek, spirit takes a neuter pronoun. It's a neuter noun. It means it. So even in the King James, you will find the Holy Spirit referred to as it. So that certainly doesn't mean the Holy Spirit is not a person. Some people believe so, but I think there's such overwhelming evidence to the contrary. I don't know how they justify that. They go by pronouns, which is a very dangerous way to develop a theology. But the point being that even in Hebrew, for example, a man's hand would be called she on a man. So I'm just saying, don't make too much out of pronouns.
The Gnostics would say that's androgyny.
Yes, of course. But what can you do? There's only so much irrationality you can chase down the street, just waste all your time on that.
It is interesting that they named it Sophia, though. That they named this robot.
Yeah, I know they know what they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're being prepped one way or
another. It's too obvious that some of these people in the really high up positions, it's too obvious. They have to know.
Right. That's why I did a video once, and I referred to the really excellent long video by Truth is Stranger Than Fiction called Ethereal, where it exposes the religion of the powers that be as being this Gnostic Luciferian belief. And that's what quantum physics really is. He explains in that documentary, I guess you could call it Ethereal, that this is their religion, the religion that's being promoted, especially in Flat Earth, that is this Gnosticism Luciferian. This is their religion. Why is Flat Earth chasing after the very religion of the powers that be? And the ball earthers are doing the same, with quantum physics.
Yeah, because they are making the real one true God that loves mankind. They are making him out to be the evil one, and Satan the liberator.
Right, exactly.
And here you have flat earthers, non-Christian flat earthers sitting here talking about, oh, well, the creator's the one that caged us here and we're in this prison, and they're making him out to be evil, just like the Luciferians and Gnostic doctrines. Terrible.
And here's this little balance in the chat there. One person says, woman babbling, said anything possible. Does that include you not having any idea what's going on? Perhaps incorrect about every assumption you've made. You sound wishy-washy about everything. And then the next comment, you're amazing. Where do you keep all this knowledge? Those are up for all eternity. They're on the screen here.
Wow, good save.
Excellent timing, Pete. I could make some really good jokes out of that Execrete name, but I will refrain and discipline myself. But good to have you back here, Billbox. But yeah, it's like, you know what? Haven't I been saying there's a precedent in the scripture? This makes logical sense. I'm backing it on this verse. and allowing to say when I don't know something instead of pretending I know, and this makes me wishy-washy. Wow.
Well,
That's just go ahead.
Well, when it comes to it, it makes me laugh too when I think of people acting like that when it comes to prophetic books that have, future prophecy. And they act like you should have answers for every single thing as if they do. Well,
Right.
and their answers are probably not right.
Well, and the thing is,
because when you think that you can't learn anything and you've already got the answers, then you're probably wrong on your answers.
right. I mean,
You're not open
and
to
the
being
people
wrong. So
well, yeah, the people who are the most confident about what they absolutely think they absolutely know and it's etched in stone are more often the most wrong, and they don't admit they could be wrong. But in spite of all this, I say, this is what I think. These are my personal convictions. I'm convicted about the pre-trib rapture and I base it on such and such. I could be wrong, but that's not my conviction. My conviction is I think I'm absolutely right, but I could be wrong because I'm human. And that's just, balancing humility and having convictions. I mean, that's something I think we're supposed to do. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's like I said, I got to bring it up again with it being a future prophetic book. Come on.
Right. I mean, this is the kind of things we can all expect, and I'm sure we've all had a lot. I mean, pretty much all the Blue Wrenches and people on the panel here all know about what kind of irrational hatred you get just for speaking your opinion. I mean, I wouldn't go up to somebody and say that. It's like if they're being, making a decent argument, even if I disagree with the conclusion, I can, I'm not going to insult them. I just don't understand that. So what you got there, Pillbox?
Well, it's just to get under your skin.
I know.
This reminds me of somebody that recently was talking about me after I was being slandered by a group of non-Christians, and somebody came in and said, I don't understand why people like that have to push their beliefs on somebody.
Oh.
That's my belief.
Pushing your beliefs is expressing them, apparently.
But it's hilarious because
Yeah.
this person is telling us his beliefs.
Right.
You can tell me your belief, but I'm answering questions. But I mean, the hypocrisy, guys, every time I get in these arguments and the fisticuffs with people on the internet, people who do not believe the Bible always expose themselves that they don't even believe what they're saying about themselves or about other people. It's a constant perpetual contradiction of pseudo-intellectualism. They're always trying to find something to make themselves feel better about why they don't like Christians, and all they do is make themselves look stupid. And it's been literally solidifying the truth of the Bible for me for years now, is listening to people hate the Bible. That's been my evidence since day one, and it's never been better.
Well,
Right.
the same thing happened to me in the chat. Probably the same channel and everything. I won't mention the channel, but probably the same channel in the chat. The person was implying that if you express your beliefs, then that's you forcing them. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You wouldn't apply that to your own position.
Watch this.
And talking about your own position.
Wait, hold on. Is this your first day on the internet? Do you know what this is called? The internet, where people come and express their opinions. I don't know if you saw that at the door when you walked. This must be your first 10 minutes in the internet. Like literally, like of all places, the internet. When you're walking down the street, yeah, all of you people just walk by each other like zombies and you don't express your opinion. Then all of you zombies get on the internet and go, I know everything.
No, it's only forcing your opinion on people if you're a Christian. Otherwise, I can guarantee you, if certain people got up at that convention and preached astrotheology and bashed the Bible like some of them have made a career of doing for years and years, you can go to their website and see it, nobody would have had a problem with that. It's only the Christian preacher that had a problem with it. Yeah, that people had a problem with.
Sorry, there's a little bit of lag going on here on my
sorry.
end, but was you done or?
Yeah.
Okay, 'cause I couldn't tell. There's everything lagging, but that's why it don't shock me, that we were hearing people talking about God making God out to be the person who's taken us captive and everything, and it doesn't shock me because I've been kind of thinking this way for several months now, that the flat earth is being, that Satan has decided to use this flat earth truth since it's now out of the bag, the cat's out of the bag. And it's possible that even the Antichrist is going to use it and say that I created this flat earth.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've been considering this for quite some time. And so it's no shocker for me to see now even just common people, not just the big dogs of flat earth, buying into this stuff.
It's 100% infested with Satanism. That's exactly what Satan would do. He would attack a wonderful truth, a biblical truth, and try to use it against the Bible. That's what he's been doing for 7,000 years. It started with Adam and Eve, who knew everything, telling you, hey, do you want to know more?
Right.
They already knew everything. So this is the same old trick. And these pseudo-intellectuals, I'm still looking for another term, who come to the flat earth, go, oh, look how special I am. Now I'm going to save her. But now I'm going to help people get an expedition to the North Pole, you know, even though I have to go to the grocery store and use a slave system. And, you know, I'm also going to say that slavery is bad, but I use them. And it's not the Christians, obviously. We don't need them. We don't need to be saved. We can save ourselves. And that's exactly what Satan would do, what he should do, because he is going to try to take down as many people as he possibly can. That there's nothing new under the sun. But it's shocking because 3 years ago when this started, I really was thinking, oh, wow, this is going to be so easy. People are going to wake up to the truth. Nope. Satan knows exactly what to do. Satan does not use ugly trash cans to convince you to be a Satanist. He convinces you of good things to say, hey, look how good you are now. You figured out flat earth. Worship yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm dealing with this person in the chat who's about to get banned because first of all, they didn't even know I'm not Ran. So how much attention to detail is going on here. Did you see that?
I just love it when I see somebody who's insulting and who's trollish and who's dividing and who's causing chaos and confusion sit there and try to play the victim after doing so. It's unbelievable. Well, I was only asking if you could be wrong. Well, first you called us babbling women.
Look at this. Look at this. The first comment says, unsubbed will contact you later by email, Ran. And then says, I knew you weren't Ran. Somebody's being very, very unclear at best. So go ahead and contact him. Go ahead. I mean, if you know I'm not him, complain about being banned because we're not putting up with that kind of personal attack here. Yeah, blaming Rand for what I'm saying. I don't think Rand is going to be backing you up, ex-commenter. I could say other X words, but I'm not going to.
If I could address this one dude real quick, I don't know how to say his name. Andrea's
Design. Andrea's Design.
Yeah, I was. The crazy thing about that is atheists have come to Christ from seeing the whole flat earth truth and everything. But the problem is the flat earth really only brings you to, yes, the earth is designed and there is a creator. They have to find out who that creator is. So atheists may come to a type of deist position, or not really deist, but a theist position of not knowing what the God is, but then they have to go a step further and try to figure out who this God is. So some atheists could definitely be led astray and fall for the whole Luciferian thing that we're talking about, where some of them can also come to Christ. And I've seen many come to Christ. So thank the Lord for that.
Yeah, that's what I was seeing at the very beginning of it is people are, all the years I debated with in the creation evolution thing, I never saw this many people start believing in a creator. And I'm like, where's the Christians? We need to be here and pick up this opportunity because people are believing something we could never convince them of before. And they're starting to be led, like you were saying, straight to follow the Gnostic one, the God is bad and Lucifer's good, or anything but, the aliens, this is a simulation, all sorts of theories are being thrown out there. Everything but the
If
Bible
that's
for
human,
now,
yeah.
yeah, for now, there are some Christian voices, but there's not enough. And people are complaining that if there's
Well,
one or two Christians, it's too many.
well, and it's from what it looks like and seems like to me, there's more non-Christians that are jumping aboard the
Yeah.
flat earth truth than there are Christians.
Yeah. And I can tell you partly why, at least. I'd have to ask them. But my assumption, as having been in the creation evolution debate, one thing that the atheists always threw at us was, oh, you believe in a flat earth because you believe in the Bible. And we had tried all those years to distance ourselves from flat earth. So now people don't want to go back. No, that's a deception. They're trying to make us look bad again. When it's
Well, they
actually
should,
for them.
because we've got all the evidence on our side. So, I mean, the evidence is there. The evidence is clear that we are on a flat earth.
Right. So it's just, I'm just trying to say, why so many Christians would be running from it because of that smear that we were smeared with all those years before this,
Well, yeah, I would say, and I know Eve's gonna know who I'm talking about when I'm talking about the slick Christians who are the, again, pseudo intellectuals that think they know everything, and they have their armchairs and they do their videos with them sitting in their big chair with their books and their awards behind them, and these are the exact people that are saying how stupid flat Earth is, and it's absolutely that, is that they've hardened their hearts in this after years of hearing it from atheists, like you said. Paula, and nothing could be further from the truth as far as accepting this flat Earth and versus accepting the world. You're accepting the world versus, and now you're ignoring Christians, saying, "Look at this evidence. Look at this evidence." Rob Skiba has by far done this more than any other Christian, and that's why I love Rob Skiba. Rob Skiba does a phenomenal job exposing Christians and how psychotic they can be, and it's all the same thing. It's always pride. They're worried about their intellectualism. They're worried about seeming smart. Their pride. I mean, Kent Hovind, I love the guy. He did a wonderful job for about 20 years, but he has absolutely fallen prey to this deception now. And I used to advocate for him, and I used to call the jails and the whole nightmarish thing that was going on when he was in prison for 8 years because he structured money. He used his own money. So put that Christian in jail. You're not allowed to use your own money. So we were really upset about that. That was a big deal for Rand and myself. We made videos about that. And we were hot. We were absolutely irate about that. I had this feeling, wait a minute, when Ken Hovind gets out of jail, is he going to do something stupid? I had a really fishy feeling. And of course, once he got out of jail, he was flooded by Christians who are very meek and quiet Christians that say, Kent, you got to look at this flat Earth. You won't believe. And Ken Hovind, of course, no. The ships sail over the horizon. That's, they knew that, and then they, they go out of view. The same old, ridiculous. Okay, we can see ships sail over the horizon, but we have to be at 300,000 feet to see the curve. Okay, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't understand why they're so concerned about how they appear to people when they're already, but with atheists already think that they're crazy and all this. So why does that matter?
Yeah, seriously.
How about the shocking fact that go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, we're told in scripture we're not supposed to care other than representing Christ properly. We're not supposed to care what they think about us if we are representing Christ in truth properly.
Right.
How about the frightening claim that we get, or the question that we don't get from atheists, because they're going to say, you can ask an atheist, what would change your life if the Earth was flat, and a lot of them are going to say, whoa, and then I got to do there's a whole bunch of things they're going to, but then the Christian says, what difference does it make? That's the frightening part. That's the scariest question I've ever heard. Talk about a horror movie.
Yeah, that just boggles my mind too.
Oh, what difference does it make that about 1 billion people have been killed by a satanic globe religion for 2,000 years? Yeah, I don't know what the difference would make.
Hey, what difference does it make that it would verify Job 38:14 and about 100 more different verses on the creation and instill more strength in the scriptures, more faith in the scriptures to the believer? No, that don't make any difference.
How about then one of these same people, and I think even Teal was there, this was many months ago, said, well, can't God, do miracles? Even though he said it's flat, it could be a ball. I go, well, can't God do what he said he did?
Right.
Dear Lord. I mean, he can do miracles. Can he do what he said? That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say he did what he said. And man, I would get so mad about that. I admit.
Well,
Yes,
plus it would be a deception. Why would God deceive like that?
Right. And
No,
this
it's
whole
parable.
idea,
It's a parable.
I've heard people say, about the whole Joshua 10 thing. Well, God shrank the sun, brought it closer, stopped it. And I'm like, what? Nowhere in scripture does it say anything like that. That is just ridiculous, man.
I know the whole stop the earth thing, which would have to be, and nobody would notice. I mean, people say, well, you don't notice the spin because there's no change of acceleration. That's a serious change of acceleration.
Yeah, try about 100,000 G forces. Yeah, the whole point of when you fall and hit the ground, it's the sudden stop that kills you. That's because you're doing about 150 Gs when you hit the ground. That's the point.
Yeah, that would be, you would have some kind of horrendous shearing force. They call it in physics a shearing force because it's a sideways force, because the spin, you're on the surface of it, then it's angular momentum and all that sort of thing, and you're going, the sideways motion is stopping. And supposedly, I mean, gravity as it stands, the theory, is all about motion toward the center, and it has nothing to do with, actually not motion, but distance and mass. That's all that's in the formula for gravity, is mass and distance. So the angular motion of the earth has nothing to do with it. So you would still be stuck to the earth the same way you are, but because of your because that, nothing else would happen, but because of the shearing force, you're going to be pushed sideways. In other words, you'd be pushed along the ground suddenly at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, and that's going to hurt.
It's
That's
just
ridiculous.
all,
Yeah.
now being out of the whole globe earth deception, it's just all so obviously ridiculous. And that's why I don't understand why these Christians are worried about being mocked when it's really the globe model that should be mocked. It's
Right.
just so far out there.
And
Spinning ball with water stuck to it. Yeah, okay.
yeah, everything to do with it. And what gets me is, that one article I referred to in a video a couple of days ago on Waterworld, where they did such an awesome job with the linguistics, but they still believed in evolution. And I was like, whoa, cognitive dissonance. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But then their next question is, but wait a minute, are you saying all the other planets are flat too? And my answer to that is, well, let's really look at them. Look, all the stars are actually two-dimensional circles, and so is the sun and moon. So since all the stars and the sun and moon and the heavenly bodies are actually all two-dimensional circles, I guess we are too, right? Thanks for playing.
Well,
Go ahead.
Sorry. The bad thing about that is they're basing it off of the ancient assumption that we're part of the heavenly bodies to begin with. And that's just ridiculous. That's never been shown to be the case.
Well, it's like people say, you can't judge the shape of the floor by looking at the ceiling. And now I have to say, looking at the sun and moon, as I've done quite a lot of with my scope and camera, they look spherical to me through the scope, through magnification and filters and all that. They look spherical to me, but the stars and planets don't. They are just points of light. And now Saturn has a ring. I've seen it. Jupiter has stripes. I've seen it. But they still look flat to me. I mean, but here again, it doesn't matter to me. It still doesn't make the Earth shape anything. It's just bad logic to say that what I see in the sky is round. And people say everything in nature that nature makes is round. And I'm like crystals, you mean? Crystals are round? I don't think so. Sorry about the dog.
That's okay. Yeah, I think just making the assumption that we're part of the heavenly bodies is ridiculous to begin with. So anytime somebody says something like that, that's what I bring up.
Yeah, I try to just use logical thinking first the first line. And just like when it comes to evolution, I will take them to a site called Science Against Evolution that doesn't talk about the Bible unless an atheist brings it up first. And they never use it as their defense because they don't even need to. It's just science itself debunks evolution. And by that token, it also, they don't get into earth shape there, but they get into earth age mostly and design versus accident. But you'd have to wonder, I'm not going to ask the person. He's kind of an older fellow, as I understand, that does decide. I'm not going to go there. But just using their own science against them, I think, is a good first step, because then you have eliminated any other reason to reject what you're saying. So if you can get them to doubt their own religion, then you fill in the vacuum with the truth. I just think that's a better approach.
Right. Well,
I just have to say this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Teal. Go ahead.
I'm more kind of philosophical minded, so I kind of like the whole reasoning over versus science, the whole science thing. So I think people have different approaches when it comes to that. Go ahead, Pillbox.
I have to mention the sun and moon again, just so I can finally disagree with Paula on something. When you go to the Disneyland Masonic haunted house, if you've ever been there, I went there in the late 80s with my father, and I remember in the haunted house, and the most fascinating thing about it were the hologram faces that no matter where you were, they followed you. My dad would be on one side of the room, I'd be on the other, and we would see the same face, and there's a shape of a face, a head, yet it is actually a flat image. And the same can be talked about with trading cards. When I was a little minion kid, I used to collect some stupid trading cards, and some of them would be holograms of a three-dimensional image, but the actual object is obviously 100% flat.
Yeah, if you go by, if it's a projection of some sort or anything like that, yeah, it could be. I mean, but all I'm saying is, like, for example, the moon looks like it's externally lit because it has surface shadows. That's all I'm saying. And although as I've said on my moon videos, the moon is truly a puzzle, because when it's full, it looks like a flat disk. It does not act like a sphere. The light does not fall away from the center. There's no hot spot. It should be darker at the edges, and it isn't. But when it's not full, wherever that terminator line is, you see shadows on the craters, which indicate all light coming from one side, and this makes it look like a sphere. Now, the sun, on the other hand, is really hard to tell its shape, but when I watch the spots, I see them go off the edge like they're become elliptical. If they were round, they become elliptical like you would expect on a ball, and it does look brighter in the center. Although it's emitting light, it looks brighter in the center. But here again, that doesn't prove anything. I'm just saying what it looks like. So we really are in agreement.
Right.
It looks like it.
Right. Now, just think of it this way. Look how easy the piece of garbage, man's technology of a flat screen television can show you a three-dimensional model. It does, you know what I mean? Like that's,
right.
And that's garbage compared to what God makes. And another example is when you see these illusions with, I don't even know how to explain them, because I've never been interested in illusions or magic. But when they show you like an image of a pop-up book or some sort of, how do I explain this? When you're looking at like images that are designed to be an illusion, it's actually the reverse. It looks like it's a round surface, or it looks like it's coming at you, but it's actually concave. So there's some serious, things that we can just use simple experiments to show that, it doesn't always seem what it looks like, or looks like what it seems, or it is what it seems. So I don't know. The sun and moon are certainly not understandable because they are heavenly bodies, though. I don't think we're ever going to understand until we get out of here.
Right. And tracking the sun, just on a daily basis makes no sense in any model that I can think of without some kind of lensing thing, which I've done I have a cosmology playlist, and go into concave, double concave lens shapes that would have to be between the sun and the earth in order to explain the sun's motion just across one point on the earth over the course of a day. It's just really puzzling. And I think I've gotten to the point where it's like, I think I've seen enough. I do want to see some more, come a whole year since I've been really studying the sun, because I started right about the solstice. to see what the spots are doing, what the path is, and just double check it. But I don't expect to find anything different. I expect the sun to not make any sense in any model without some kind of lens that makes it appear where it isn't, and how the temperature lags behind the light through the seasons and all sorts of things. And like everybody who's looked at the moon says, it just doesn't make any sense on any day of the week. It's just a puzzle. The whole thing is a puzzle, as well as especially the really bright strobe light stars like Sirius that I can see more in the winter. And it's just below and to the left of the constellation Orion. If you follow the belt of Orion down past the lower leg, you'll see this really bright, flashy star, blue and red fluorescent colors, just flashing to beat the band. I mean, it stands out so much. And you try to zoom in on it, and you still see a flashy blue-red light. And it's like, this can't be anything like we're told in mainstream science. That's all I know. What the nature of it is, we're never going to find out, because, again, we're looking through lenses. We're inside. It's like being inside of a magnifying glass, only the wrong shape of lens. But it being inside of it, it's like everything's distorted. I don't know. And I think it's fun to study, but trying to reach a firm conclusion and prove anything without going there and taking a sample, it's not going to happen. Not in this lifetime. You guys still there?
Yeah, I am.
Virtually.
None of us are real. And there are people who've actually said that about us, at least some of us I know.
We're just a figment of your imagination.
Yeah. But people get so upset at figments. I mean, really, I don't understand that. And they're afraid of them, too. They're afraid of...
the mentality is frightening to me, and I don't know what other word to use. I mean, that's like saying my father's passed away, so he was just an illusion. Like, I just talk about how many people you're insulting, how many crazy ideas, the broad spectrum of insulting the creation. I can't think of a worse way. I really can't.
Well, that's actually the newest cutting bleeding edge of quantum physics. I mean, there's a site called commonsensescience.org, I think is .org or info or something, where one of their articles says, quotes from physicists saying that the moon is not there if nobody looks at it.
Oh, slopsism.
Yes, exactly.
We have to have an observer for any of this to exist.
And it all comes from that ridiculous double slit experiment.
Yeah.
Where looking at it changes things. Well, you know what? You're bombarding a light particle with light particles. What do you think's going to happen? But even if
it's all about you, isn't? Dang. It's really all about you, huh, buddy? Holy moly.
But even if that is probably, I don't know, an oversimplification of the problem of the double slit experiment, it's still, even Tesla would disagree with it, because everything's a vibration. And what he would, and Eric Dollard and people like that would explain quanta or photons as simply where waveforms, I always forget which it is, but I think it's when, like, if you have a sine wave, an S wave going with a line through it, that's a sine wave, okay? And it repeats, and it has high points and low points above the line, below the line. Well, if you have two sine waves, one going, the opposite phase of the other, you'll get a really big wave and then nothing. It cancels out. Then a really big wave, then nothing. It cancels out. And those points or nodes where the crossings are photons. In other words, they're not quanta. They're not particles. They're not discrete items that are being bombarded, coming into your eye and looking and hitting your eye. They're waves that are either multiplying each other at the high points or canceling each other out at the low points, are being perceived as pulses. That's what waves do when there's more than one wave at a time. They come as pulses, and those are being called quanta. And the whole atomic theory, atom means the smallest thing in Greek, and that whole thing depends on understanding the universe as made of quanta, whereas Tesla would describe it as being made of vibrations. I'm going with Tesla on this. I just don't think that double slit is taking that into consideration. Why they think anything's a particle, it's all coming from the Einsteinian, view of things, which is ultimately Gnostic, Luciferian, theosophical, magical stuff. Did I just put everybody to sleep? Man. Chased away pillbox.
No, I'm just checking some stuff out. Had some messages sent to me, so I had to check them
Oh,
out.
okay. Are we being, I hope it's nothing too bad.
No, it ain't nothing to do with this.
Okay, well, that's good, I hope. But I don't know if you guys want to go over anything else, or we've had enough for one day, or what you want to do.
I like the end. Andreas Design says, tell them next time they play pool to ask for a ball table.
Yes. And we'll shove flat things all over the surface.
Yeah, until the Christians build a foundation on a ball as well.
Photons, electrons, and morons. That's a good one. And leptons. I mean, they make up words like leptons and gluons, and it's just funny. And they
get
pass
some
it on.
sun. Dear Lord, get some sun, please.
But that's excellent, morons. Yeah. So
Just
what you want to do?
Be on your toes out there, Christians. I mean, you wouldn't believe what happened recently. The escapade of Satanism attacking us in every way has never been worse. I last night got attacked by a room of people because I was defending myself, telling me that I'm the attacker, I'm an accuser when I'm defending myself. So it's the level of hypocrisy has never been greater. The level of hate and detest and scrutiny, false accusation, constant lying is just everywhere. And these are people that, are flat earthers, by the way. And as a pretty prominent, proponent of the flat earth, I mean, I take it pretty seriously. It's absolutely biblical truth. They don't even care that I'm a flat earther. They don't care that, I've been doing this since April 2015. And you just got to watch your back, man. You have no idea how many people are around you that are actually possessed. It's just a sad truth.
Well, that's the irony. And I was talking about this to somebody the other day about the fact that they say, well, Christians are so negative to each other. And I'm like, look at flat earthers. I mean, they talk about unity and peace and acceptance and tolerance. And this, we're all, rainbows and unicorns. Unless you're a Christian, why I did a video once called Except for You, because all of a sudden, they don't care if you're a flat earther anymore. They don't care if you're on their side. They don't care what you might have done for the community. All they care is as soon as they hear Christian or Jesus or Bible, they're triggered and you're the enemy and they got to get rid of you, get you out of flat earth. That you're going to bring us down and this, we're taking over, we're swooping in. I heard someone say, or saw someone say on a video of the clip of the conference of what's his name? Dean Odell, I think is his name, that did an excellent, brave presentation there. And they're afraid. It's just fear. It's Christophobia. That if anybody expresses an idea, which, like I said, for all the world, that the whole flat earth behavior and terminology could be, you just change the word to Christian and Bible and you'd have the same attitudes, the same teachings, the same behaviors, the same gatherings and everything. But the name Jesus triggers people and they think we're taking over. Well, I'm sorry, we were here first, A, and B, we're not taking over. Look at all the hard push for astrotheology and solipsism and syncretism and Gnosticism, Luciferianism, even Jeranism. People make up their own. It's just an instance of solipsism. But anything, ABC, anything but Christianity. And it makes them afraid.
Well, and that's the thing. It should be truth that matters, not, what group has the truth, and let's demonize them because they have the truth. It should be, what is the truth? Let's figure it out. And people should be wanting that, but they don't want it. They don't want the truth. And the scriptures say that they don't want the truth. And they don't have a love for the truth. And that's why they are sent to strong delusion.
10,000%. Last night when I, after about a 45-minute conversation, I was trying to get across a lot of points to help somebody that seemed that they were being inquisitively honest. And I eventually said, though, how would you feel if wouldn't that matter if you figured out God? And the guy says, no, that wouldn't make me happy. And I thought, oh, my dear Lord, thank you for proving my point. It's not about truth. It's about your high. It's about your fix, your drug, your crack pipe. And that's all it's ever been. These people that are doing this, these flat earthers, these pseudo-intellectuals, whatever, you name it, that are in between truth and Satan, only care about their high. I can't think of a different word. They want to feel that high of searching, like I'm going to find this, I might find that, I'm about to have a breakthrough. That's all a high, the endorphins in your mind when you discover something. And I understand, because when I understood flat earth quickly, I absolutely had that euphoric state, like, wow, this is amazing. I love this. I was absolutely ecstatic. So I understand. But it doesn't mean that's what your rest of your life is supposed to be, a constant high. And there's no other way for me to describe it. These people want to constantly be high. It's not about truth. And the same people say it could be a virtual reality. So I virtually know nothing. And it's just another high. There's no other way to describe it. It's not the truth they're seeking. It's a drug addiction.
Well, and it's all about feelings, because that's what happened when I was conversing with one of my atheist friends, when they sit there and basically told me that they would rather be happy in an illusion than to be uncomfortable with truth.
Right.
So it's all about how they feel. And they don't value, the truth over feelings.
Right. This is just something that I mentioned the other day also about that Christians do too. Once they get saved and they're all high about that, and then it wears off, and then they want to go to church every week just to rekindle that, and it's all about the experience. Then it's not about everyday life. It's why people break up their relationships a lot too, because it's not exciting anymore. It's not new. It's not the high anymore, and they don't know how to just live in that relationship or live it, whether it's Christianity or whatever. And yeah, they run from one thrill to the next, and you can't ever satisfy that. You have to keep, it's like drug addicts, they say, that keep looking for a bigger high and a stronger one. And it just never ends until it kills them, because they're looking for something that's always going to be like a carrot on a stick in front of them. So
virtually.
And that's the thing that kills me about the whole virtual reality thing is, okay, then nothing matters. I can't avoid coming to that conclusion logically, because especially
because there is no matter. Go ahead.
Yeah. But I mean, especially if reality, that's the only way the Mandela effect could work, in my opinion, also, is if the evidence can change from 1 second to the next. It's impossible to investigate anything, and anybody who talks virtual reality out of one side of their mouth and investigation and science out of the other side is hopelessly contradictory and irrational. And if you try to talk reason and evidence to such a person, you'll never ever get anywhere.
Well,
go ahead.
How does somebody sit there and say, okay, well, we realized that the globe was a deception, and the globe was a deception that, it wasn't representing our true Earth, but then turn around and say, well, holograms and virtual realities, they do represent the truth. What? I mean, that is so contradictory. It blows my mind. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's irrational. Like I said, I mean, you're either rational or you're not about something. And if one is rational that's talking together and the other is irrational, it's like speaking two different languages. They're never going to make any sense to each other. I don't know. There's just nothing to be done about it. How can you talk to someone?
Yeah, it's actually worse than atheism. At least an atheist has a foundation of nothing and then everything. But with the virtual reality world, you just have nothing, and then virtually nothing. So that's the reality, is that like, even like, I just have to like shake my head, because these people have actually taken a step backwards. They came to flat earth, they took 2 steps forward, then they took 170,000 steps backwards. It's shocking to me. And these are, of course, 99% of the time atheists of the past. They used to be atheists, and now they're VRists, and instead of going forward, they went backwards.
Well, and I just wanted to say too that atheists that are actually skeptical, because there are some out there that try to claim that they're skeptical and they're really not. There's some that try to claim that they're logical, they're really not. But the ones that are really skeptical, they're going to be the non-Christian flat earthers are going to fall for the Antichrist and the Antichrist system far sooner than an atheist. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I know that's a little bit kind of veering a different direction, but you bringing up, atheism, I just had to put that forth.
I agree with that. Yeah, they are going to be more likely, because the atheist will say it's not a virtual reality. This is just naturalism.
Yeah,
Right.
that's just always convenient. There's always a convenient escape, or what they call in logic a special pleading fallacy, where, oh, I believe this and this is consistent, except for then it doesn't matter. It's like their wild card that they can play.
Right. The atheist is pretending they understand facts and claiming facts. Of course, they have zero. But the VR is saying there are no facts. You can't have facts no matter what. So what really is worse? It's frightening.
Well, I mean, you can find some atheists that try to claim around the similar things, that you can't know, you can't have 100% truth, that anything's possible, stuff like that.
Yeah, the non-absolutist.
Yeah, I'm just saying that they're not going to be falling for the whole Luciferian doctrine as quick as a non-Christian flat earther. Not as quickly fall for it. I'm just saying, not as quickly.
Right. Yeah, I'd done some videos on rationality, epistemology. Does it even matter to be rational? But the people who need to see that are never going to go to my channel. I just don't, it's there. At least nobody can say I didn't try. But I mean, a lot of us would go around every day trying to share videos or articles, or just give some arguments of our own in a chat, and people just brush it off. They ask for proof, but as soon as you provide it, they raise the bar, they move the goalposts. And it's not good enough. It's never good enough. You raise it again, it's never good enough. After a while, you just get to just recognize those people and walk away. And then they call you a coward for walking away. So,
or they'll keep asking you for questions, and then you'll explain all these things to them, and they'll say, "Why are you pushing your beliefs on me?"
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's hypocritical.
Yeah, I wish these weren't all true stories. These are all 100% factual, true events that happened very recently.
Yep. Unless it's virtual reality Mandela trees, in which case maybe it didn't happen, but you're still wrong. That's how it goes.
And then in the first breath, when a year and a half ago, a year and 1 month ago, whenever the Mandela tree hoax came out, the first claim out of these, I don't know what to call them, I don't knowists, said, well, I thought it was going to give credibility to the Bible. And you go, okay. And then a month later, yeah, the Bible can't be right because look at these Mandela trees. Well, you first told me it was going to give credibility to the Bible. And now you're saying that I shouldn't pay attention to my book. And you don't need a book because you have YouTube videos. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah. And all of them pretend to be Bible scholars. There's people who say, well, I've got 3 Bibles and they all say something different. How many have you actually read? I mean, you picked out different passages. Did they say that's something different then? B, are they different translations? Are they the same language?
No, it's right here. One says, well, no, it's right here, Paul. Let me explain. It says one says to and fro. The other one says back and forth. So you complete contradictory.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
I wish I was joking. That's exactly what they're doing.
We got silly people in the chat too going, pay attention to me, I'm important in the chat, and never mind that I told them I'm running 2 computers and 6 windows open, and they want to know why I'm not talking to them personally. We're trying to have a conversation, and I didn't have to run a chat if I didn't want to. Maybe I shouldn't. But wow, go ahead and ban them, whoever wants to the honors. I can't be bothered to lift my finger on my mouse to ban that person who's insulting us.
Let me see here. I want to read this. I just had to refresh real quick.
All
Is
right.
it? Let's
Yeah.
see. What's?
Yeah, let's leave it up there for a second so people can see what I'm talking about.
Not. I'm speaking. No one's speaking. This Juliet Foxtrot person.
Yeah.
No. What?
He's using
Yep.
military
The
terminology.
phenolic. Yeah. The I forgot what it was. Yeah. The military alphabet. Right. What was this person trying to accomplish? Is there any point or?
Something about not paying attention to the chat because we're having a conversation and talking about deep things, and we should be mostly just reading chat aloud, I guess.
Well, we do. I mean, I do. I certainly look at the chat back and forth. I've been doing it all night, but I didn't see this person maybe up until now. I mean, I certainly want to give shout outs to the people that aren't being ridiculous, but did they have a point besides me? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, they said they, go ahead, Eve.
Bringing up that there's under 20 people here is not an issue, at least for me, because the truth, most people, I mean, the truth is not going to attract big, huge crowds. So.
Yeah, you can go to the cat lol videos where there's about 5,000 of you sheeple watching. There's about 5,000 people watching the cat lol video. You can go to the Teletubbies videos, probably a couple million watching those if you want.
Yeah, there's like how many thousand that watch NASA all day, every day?
Yeah, there's 5,000 people, right? 5,000 people. I just checked, so I know that watching magical cartoons from the government. So yeah, I guess they're winning. Yeah, 5,000 people just staring there as their life passes before their eyes.
Yeah, this is just a good case study in the kind of hypocrisy we're dealing with all the time, and people who never make their own videos or leave the house or whatever it is. They accuse us of being mouth breathers, they were saying. I don't know how they talk without opening their mouths, but
well, we know what they open. That's probably the issue. They're not opening their mouth. Now, here's the other thing. It's like when I used to be a teacher and a parent would bring their student to me, I should have just said, well, there's only one student here, so could you please leave?
Yeah.
I should have just broomed him out the door. I mean, how stupid am I? Darn it. These pseudo-intellectual anti-Christians just always know better.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I think
go ahead.
To suggest that just because we're speaking about the truth of Jesus Christ, that we think that we're better than others, that's just ridiculous, because it's Christ in us. Christ has all the glory for everything. If it wasn't for him, we would be nothing. So all the glory goes to him, not any of us.
And I've heard a certain astrotheologist say that he knew the Bible better than any Christian in the world ever, that he knows how to interpret it and no Christian does, and that anyone who disagrees with his interpretation is a fool. But I don't see anybody going to his channel and chastising him for his colossal ego, or that he thinks he's right and millions and millions of people are wrong. It's only Christians that get treated like that.
Also, to that noob, he might want to read the part of Genesis where there was only 8 people on a boat. That might tell you something too.
Yeah, majority doesn't rule sometimes.
That's actually the point of this, is that I tell people all the time, I expect to talk to maybe 15 people on average every time. I don't even look at the count meter and say that's really 20 people. I say, okay, maybe there's 10 and 15. That's a room full of people. I mean, that's a lot of soul. That's a lot of weight to me. That's 1,000 pounds. I don't know what else to tell you. If you don't think 15 people matter, that's a serious internal problem that you have.
And on the other hand,
not only that, just
go ahead.
Go ahead, Paula.
I've seen, some of the big flat earth channels that start off trashing the Bible, of course, that used to have instantly, even though they're new to flat earth, like 500 viewers and 2,000 subs. And now you go to their channel and there's 8 people. We don't buy subs and viewers. That's the point. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, you got to go ahead first, Teal.
Oh, no, I was just going to make the point that, even if it was just one person that was listening and watching, that seed is planted and that person can reach 2 more people, and those 2 people could reach 5. God is the one that's working through us and his believers and his people. So, and he says that his word will not return void.
Right.
So, he's the one bringing about the fruitfulness.
Right. The loaves and fishes, if I might just interject quick. And I mean, I get 8 people at my hangouts, so this is pretty good. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't know what he's trying to think we're supposed to do here, but I personally, and this might not be what most Christians think, but I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm here to help the people that already know the truth, that there's people out there that are going to back them till death. And we ain't going anywhere. And this is the only truth in the world. It doesn't matter if this is the smallest population in the world. In fact, I guarantee it should be. I always say that us Christians are surrounded in the center of this flat earth by the entire world. We have always been outnumbered. That's why the stories in the Bible talk about the underdog, the David and Goliath story. That's the whole point. We're not supposed to be the majority. The path is narrow. And I like elbow room personally, first of all. And I'm not here to wake anybody up. I can't wake anybody up. That person has to find truth on their own. I tried to wake up Teal Summers, for example, for 2 years. She didn't want to have any of it. So the fact of the matter is that God's in control. And ultimately, you might be in control of your own fate, though. In a negative manner. If you don't want to accept the truth, then that's your problem. This isn't about a popularity contest. I don't have a PayPal or a Patreon account to take money from you. I'm not interested because God has already given me everything I've ever had or needed or wanted and things I shouldn't even be allowed to have. So, it's just people are miserable. Yeah.
I just don't know why they come to a channel to say those things. The only time I say negative stuff in a chat on somebody's channel is if there's spreading disinfo about the Bible or Jesus or something like that. Then I'm like, back up your claims. You made a claim I think is false. Why don't you show me how you back it up? And they don't, of course, and they consider that attacking and ramming my beliefs down their throat. What are you going to do? But the point is that I don't go up to somebody's channel and go, "You're stupid. You're a mouth breather. You should have more viewers." I mean, what's up with that? Yeah. Yeah, we get all sorts of... I'm on the wrong side of so many fences. I think I've lost count.
Might as well call us babbling white women.
Don't give me ideas.
Ouch.
I could totally do that. But now it would take
and if Mr. Smarty Pants has a better army, let me know where it is. I'll put my 20 people up against his army any day, and it will be a wipeout. So bet on that. So get your army and let me see how many viewers you get.
Yep. I am told that in ancient Rome, a squad of soldiers was expected to defend 6 square feet of ground against an entire invading army. That's how they were trained, and that's the kind of soldiers that guarded Jesus' tomb. And those soldiers fainted in terror, but the women didn't. Just take that, Smarty Pants.
Those babbling women.
Yeah.
And there's another thing about this. I think this whole revelation thing, I think it is a comprehensible thing to the woman much more than it is for the man. That's what I've been realizing. I have a very hard time with this stuff. And anytime I see a man say something, it just doesn't seem like they're as confident or as sure or as informed as the woman when it comes to this specific topic of revelation. I think there's a separation that, men can do other things and women do other things. And that's the reality of it. For some reason, when it comes to revelation, women just seem to get it better. I've never seen a man talk about revelation and explain it well. Never.
I've heard a few, but we're just uppity women flapping our gums and not, and being overconfident and thinking we know everything. That's what I was told.
Well, Eve was the one that was deceived.
Yep, and so also all women.
Yep. Women.
Yep, we inherited deceivableness, but somehow the men did not inherit inherit passing blame, and no men are deceivable.
And somehow they didn't inherit rejecting or rebelling against
right.
what they know they shouldn't be doing.
Nope.
Well, doing what they know they shouldn't be doing. There you go.
Something like that. I get you. I was too busy just laughing at all this silliness, but
Knowingly sinning.
Yeah. It's a whole tangled mess when you think about so many beliefs that divide, and that's all I could lump them all under, whether it's that or clergy laity or skin color or flat earth, ball earth, or anything that people want to divide over. They're going to divide. They just pick their favorite excuse,
Well, you got brown hair. She's got blonde. Blondes are dumb.
Oh, the blonde jokes are funny, but still. Oh, man.
Yes, once we shut down Flat Out Elected, we will start a new channel called Babbling White Women, as Pete Van Veen has insisted.
Yeah.
Better add Christian in there. Babbling white Christian women.
Flat Earth, Young Earth Creationist White Women Babbling channel. Like I said, outside of every box, on the wrong side of the tracks, every track. But like you said, pillbox, elbow room. Huh?
It's crazy.
It is. Well, have we beaten the crazy to a pulp tonight, or what? Anything else you guys want to talk about, or?
Not really.
Okay. Well, we'll do next time we do a hangout. I don't know what day or any time like that, but we will go on to, I think we stopped at the end of chapter 13, and we'll get into more of this middle of the 7 years discussion that's going on in Revelation. There's always a lot of things to stop and talk about. And I'm sure everybody wants a break and a snack and a drink and stuff like that. So I know I do. And next time, hopefully, we won't have so many technical issues starting up. I'll try to get my computers to behave. And maybe I can pay somebody to watch the chat for me and speak on my behalf so I don't get in trouble for that.
We should try to pick up on the Revelation thing as soon as possible, though. But I won't be able to tomorrow, though, because I got a prayer meeting at 7.
Okay.
Unless we do it before that.
It's kind of hard for Pillbox to go earlier, isn't it?
We could wait.
Yeah, it usually is. I'm definitely a night owl.
Okay. Well, if this is a good time of day, we'll just wait. We can wait one day. That's no biggie. We can do it. Let's see. Well, today is Thursday. That would be Saturday in the evening. I should be able to.
Yeah, we should try to get it completed before the holidays, before Thanksgiving.
Oh man, yeah, that's next Thursday.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. If we got to like 17. Yeah, we can do it in a couple of hangouts, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So we might be able to get it done over the weekend, and maybe Monday or Tuesday too. Wednesday is my birthday.
Oh, awesome! Happy birthday! If I forget, which I probably will.
Yeah, I'm becoming an old fart.
Oh man, you're not over 30 now, are you?
I'm 36, or I'll be 36.
Man, I'm going to be 60 next year.
What?
Yes.
You don't look that old. I seriously thought you were in your 40s.
Wow, awesome. Thank you. I wish I felt younger.
Well, I think that's me too, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I'm 60 years old. I'll be getting in my car like, ugh. My daughter will be looking at me like, Mom, are you all right?
Yeah.
I just feel old.
And that's another thing I think that is a big disconnect for me online with some of these people. It's like these people might be 15, 30. They're still youngins to me. It's like, you know what? I don't even like your mentality anymore. I've been too far from that. And maybe I just don't get what they're saying, or they don't get what I'm saying. But you know what? I've been around long enough. I just get tired of stuff quicker. I don't know.
Generational gap.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that it's just kind of it's just idiots. Don't let the 30-year-olds
Hold on, refresh.
Okay, because we got it. We can't leave without Pillbox doing the outro.
Oh, that's right.
So he's got to refresh, he says.
Thanks everybody for coming, and
Yeah.
I can't wait to pick this back up.
Yeah, I can't wait for Jesus to pick us up, but you know, we could all say
Yeah,
that.
I would rather that happen. Yes.
Yeah. All righty, Pillbox, if whenever you're ready, give us our outro and we'll be on our way.
Just want to look out here on the chat right quick. Victoria Sarton, thank you very much. Ma'am, you have been awesome as usual. Probably one of the greatest people I've ever met who won't come on the Hangout. So Victoria, next time you got to get on here. I think you'll be very good when it comes to this Revelation topic. Let's see right now. It is 7:38 west of the Rockies, south of the 33rd parallel. This has been flat out elected. I thank everybody for joining us on the Red October. I will tell you this. For time and the world will not stand still. Entropy is the lore of life ever since Satan took over the garden. For those who are only certain to look to the past or the present are certain to miss revelation. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.